Chapter 259. Yu Xingyang's words were very blunt, but everyone knew that by Pinghai's insistence on inviting people to the manor was nothing more than to join forces with a few of the grand sects to suppress this matter. This wasn't messing around, but a common tactic used by these major forces, turning a big issue into a small one, turning a small issue into nothing, and finally leaving it unsettled. These tactics weren't something that ordinary people could contend against. What could a peasant youth with no background use to fight against so many sects? But if you objected, you would be making an enemy of these forces and the consequences. There would be no consequences to speak of. Bai Pinghai couldn't help but turn to Yu Xingyang and sneer. "Brother Yu, do you not trust my character?" Yu Xingyang's sneer was even more intense. "Ever since the martial arts conference 7 years ago, I've never trusted you." "You." Bai Pinghai's face turned red. Others wouldn't dare speak to him like this, but Yu Xingyang had the right. Where strength was, the strong were respected. In the 5 great nations, the only one who dared to speak so bluntly was this arrogant Yu Xingyang. Bai Pinghai laughed instead of getting angry. "Well then, brother Yu, if Heaven's Wings is found to be innocent after the investigation, who will prove his innocence? As someone from the extraterritorial Devil Kingdom, you might not be aware of great General Heaven's reputation in our kingdom. The son of a general has been fooled by a country bumpkin. How will he gain the trust of the soldiers in the army in the future? This isn't a small matter, so how should we deal with it? Please enlighten us." His speaking skills were even better than Zhang Long's. Yu Xingyang had originally been in the right, but now he had turned the tables. As expected, Yu Xingyang shut up. How could Bai Pinghai's words be without reason? No matter how brilliant Yu Xingyang's saber techniques were, or how strong he was still someone from the extraterritorial Devil Kingdom. He had no right to criticize the kingdom's affairs, not to mention that this was an internal affair of the royal family. It wasn't up to an outsider to interfere. Taking 10,000 steps back, if Heaven's Wings was really wrongly accused, then who would take responsibility for the mess that was created tonight? Who would be able to bear this responsibility? Yu Xingyang's heroic spirit that had just been aroused was immediately replaced by silence. In this world, all people like him were like this. When you had strength, identity, and status, you should never think that everything would go according to your will. Because along with it, you would have a standpoint, concerns, and other considerations. These were all like a spider's web, trapping you and making you unable to move. However, the young man did not have such shackles. The snowstorm was getting heavier and the bonfire was getting weaker. The young man's chest was straightened and his nervous expression gradually became firm. "If he is innocent, I am willing to use my life to prove his innocence." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expressions changed. Yu Xingyang couldn't help but look at the youth in surprise. He didn't know if the youth was being impulsive or if the youth was already confident. Bai Pinghai snorted in disdain. "Is your life worth the reputation of being the son of a general?" The youth was fearless. "I know it's not, but I am also a citizen of the kingdom. Citizens also have dignity and reputation. Besides, if a prince breaks the law, he will be punished like a commoner. I believe that as long as he dares to take off his pants, the truth will be revealed to the world. This is a very simple matter." Bai Pinghai was really angry. A dignified expert of a generation was actually being interrogated by this country bumpkin, but he couldn't get angry now. He said in a low voice, "So, you don't want to believe me? How about this? You can choose the person who will verify the truth. No one here is a nobody, so presumably they won't play favoritism. You should be relieved now, right?" This guy was really insidious. Not to mention that none of the young heroes present knew him. Even if he did, he wouldn't have the guts to choose. If he really did choose, he would undoubtedly offend everyone else. Bai Pinghai's ability to divert trouble to others could be considered to be superb. The youth suddenly smiled. He looked very cold when he didn't smile, but when he smiled, it was very bright. "Senior Bai, it's not that I don't believe you. On the contrary, I trust you very much, and I also trust General Tian, and I trust everyone here. So, if you must make me choose, then I will choose everyone and let everyone verify together. This is the fairest way." Hearing this, Yu Xingyang actually had the urge to clap his hands. The young man's answer was too beautiful. No matter how treacherous you are, I have a clear conscience. No matter what a righteous person does, he can crush all treacherous evils. The crowd began to talk again, clearly moved by the youth's words. You, Bai Pinghai was about to refute, but he was unexpectedly stopped by Tianqing. Tianqing turned and looked coldly at Tianyi, his voice full of irresistible majesty. In front of all the guests, take off your pants and let everyone see if this girl is lying. Or are you committing a crime? Tianyi's expression was very hesitant. The alcohol in his body turned into large beads of sweat that dripped from his forehead. Seeing that he was hesitating, Tianqing's voice returned to the fierce tone he had when he was conquering the world. What is there to be afraid of? Take it off. Yu Xingyang noticed that although Tianqing's face was emotionless, his hands behind his back were trembling slightly. At this point, he was almost certain that if Tianyi dared to take off his pants, he would definitely die. However, at this moment, an old voice suddenly sounded from the main table. General Tian, please calm down. I wonder if I, as an outsider, can say a few words? A white-haired old man dressed in blue slowly walked into the courtyard. This was the kingdom's previous head of law enforcement, Jiao Gu. He retired after the current king succeeded the throne, but Jiao Gu's reputation was very high. He made friends all over the world when he was in office. No matter who it was, they had more or less received favors from him, and Tianqing was no exception. Therefore, although he called himself an outsider, he was in fact not an outsider at all. Jiao Gu slowly walked in front of the youth and said with a smile, "Young man, my name is Jiao Gu." The youth immediately bowed. "So it's Mr. Jiao. My apologies." "It's fine." Jiao Gu also looked at him with a gentle gaze. "Young man, I am very curious. Who is this deaf-mute girl to you?" The youth said, "We are not related. I was just hunting in the mountains. I only met her when I saved her this morning." Everyone sighed. This youth was still too young and did not know anything. Was it worth it for him to be so stubborn? Yu Xingyang also sighed. He was hot-blooded to seek justice for a complete stranger. Was this not his past self? Jiao Gu smiled and nodded. "Very good. Young man, you are warm-hearted. I admire you very much." The youth returned the bow again. "I don't dare." Jiao Gu put away his smile and said with a serious expression, "When I was the head of law enforcement, I also knew that the law was merciless. However, it is still too early to say what is right or wrong. I have something to say. Young man, are you willing to listen?" The youth said, "Mr. Jiao, please speak." Jiao Gu looked at Tianqing and said meaningfully, "If I remember correctly, General Tian has already been in the army for 83 years. During these 83 years, General Tian has experienced no less than 500 battles. Among them, the longest and most tragic battle is the one between the neighboring Jiayin Empire and our Great Wei Empire. It has lasted for 40 years. During these 40 years, nearly half of our kingdom's population has been killed or injured, and a third of our territory has been conquered. If it were not for General Tian's many years of valiant fighting and finally recovering the lost land, I don't think I would be able to stand here and talk to you today." No one present could deny this point. Tianqing had indeed played a great role. Jiao Gu sighed. "What I mean is very simple. More than half of the lives of those present here were given to us by General Tian. He has only protected us within the kingdom's territory for so many years. Now that you suspect that there is a problem with Skywings, let me make a bold assumption. If Skywings is truly wronged, young man, do you really want to throw away your life in vain? Then what if he isn't wronged?" The youth had an oppressive edge to him. Jiao Gu sighed. "I have been a law enforcer for many years, and there are times when I pay particular attention to showing mercy outside the law. Some things may have been done out of momentary pleasure, or it may have been instigated and blinded by someone else. The purpose of the kingdom's laws is not to punish people, but to persuade people to do good. If Skywings isn't wronged, why not give him a chance to turn over a new leaf and do good again? Young man, you are a good child, and so is Skywings. You are all still young and have a bright future ahead of you. In the future, the kingdom will still need people like you to become pillars of the kingdom. So why do you have to take someone's life? Bai Pinghai has good intentions and is worried that someone will die in vain. Today is also an auspicious day. So in my opinion, young man, how about I get someone to escort you and this young lady back? If you are willing, I will personally pay you a visit some other day to thank you for your wise choice tonight. Not only did these words make everyone present gasp in admiration, it also made Yu Xingyang sigh with emotion that these veterans were really, how should he put it? Every word was a gem. Every step was a trap. Twisted talk, coercion, emotion, and reason. Everything was contained in these words. Sure enough, a contemplative look appeared on the youth's face as he turned to look at the young lady. The young lady, however, had a blank look on her face. She could not hear anything, nor could she speak. In her silent world, the only person she could trust was this youth because he was the only one who could understand what she meant and what she wanted. She didn't have any relatives or friends. She didn't even have decent clothes. Therefore, she didn't ask for much. She just wanted justice. Justice was such a lowly word. In the eyes of those sects, nobles, and powerful people, it was a word that was misspelled. Not only was it vulgar and boring, it was also childish and laughable. However, justice was such a great word. In the hearts of those hot-blooded and courageous people, this inspiring word would always motivate them and encourage them, telling them that no matter what, they should never give up. They should live for their hearts and fight for their original intentions. The wind and snow blew, and the young lady shivered in the cold wind. A layer of ice had already formed on her thin clothes. But she didn't move. She just stared straight at the young man. On her face, there was confusion, the unknown, trust, expectation, gentleness, worry, fear. All the emotions mixed together to form a complex expression that made it difficult for people to look at her directly and also impossible to reject. At this moment, the youth slowly turned around and faced Jiao Gu once more. This time, there was no longer any contemplation or hesitation on the youth's face, only an unwavering determination. Chapter 260. Facing all these heroes and so-called nobles, the youth in the snowstorm slowly opened his mouth, his voice resounding and powerful. You want me to give Sky Wings a chance to turn over a new leaf? Then, who will return her blissful innocence? Jiaogu was stunned. He had never imagined that the youth would be so decisive. Bai Pinghai was also stunned. This was Jiaogu. Would the youth not even give him face? Qinqing's face sank. It seemed that there was no way to settle this matter peacefully. The youth pointed at the girl and continued. Didn't General Sky fight for the kingdom all his life to protect the people of the kingdom like her? In the end, she was sullied and humiliated by the nobles of the kingdom. So what was the point of General Sky fighting for her life? Just who did General Sky protect? Zhan Long could not help but say, "Shut up. How can you deny Father Sky's contributions so casually?" The youth ignored him and continued. The laws of the kingdom do urge people to do good, but they don't condone evil. General Sky protects the kingdom's land, not the kingdom's crimes. The people of the kingdom live very hard lives. She has no parents, and she was born deaf and mute. She earns a meager income by sewing and dyeing cloth, hoping to meet someone who can help her through her life of poverty. Yet, you want to deprive her of even this little right. Should the evil deeds of Skywings be punished by the kingdom's laws? His expression was generous, and the more he spoke, the more agitated he became, but Yu Xingyang's heart kept sinking. He already had a premonition that this matter was developing in a bad direction. Bai Pinghai suddenly sneered. "Little brother, from your tone, it seems that you want to deal with this matter according to the rules of the flourishing kingdom. Our kingdom has always believed that the strong are supreme. Whoever has the greater ability will have their way." The youth's face was cold. "You're a famous expert. I'm naturally no match for you." Bai Pinghai disdainfully said, "If you think I want to deal with you, you're wrong. I don't care about bullying the weak. If you want to win in terms of martial arts, we'll definitely find you an equal opponent. We won't take advantage of you. Don't you want justice? We'll give you justice now." As he spoke, he signaled with his eyes not far away. Zhan Long, who was already prepared, immediately walked over. Bai Pinghai sternly said, "This brother Zhanlong is the same as you. He's an origin ability user and not a warrior. If you can beat him, you'll have the final say on how Heaven's Wings will verify his identity." These words were not meant for the young man, but for Tianqing. Tianqing said in a deep voice, "That's right. Little brother, if you win against Brother Zhan, the matter of Er's body examination will be left to you to decide. However, swords have no eyes. The two of you should be cautious and stop when it's appropriate." A threatening glint appeared in the youth's eyes. "Is this what you said? So what if they said it? Hurry up and leave this place. As long as I'm alive, I'm not afraid that I won't have a chance to seek justice in the future." Yu Xingyang, who had always been calm, was secretly anxious at this moment. It was as if the young man with the saber in the courtyard was himself. After another gust of cold wind, the bonfire by the lake was about to be extinguished. The snowstorm in the sky became even stronger, and a strange woo-woo-woo sound could be heard in the air. The young man held his saber in a reverse grip. His origin energy had already been activated, and his body seemed to emit a layer of heat. All of the snowflakes that floated to his body were quickly swept away, turning into white gas. Zhanlong held a short sword in his hand. From the weapon he had chosen, he did not have much of an advantage over his opponent. After all, they were both short weapons. However, from the color of his short sword, one could tell that it was not an ordinary item. On the other hand, the young man's scythe was an ordinary item. Thus, Zhanlong proudly said, "Please make your move first." The young man did not bother to be polite with him. He suddenly flew into the air, his posture like a fish leaping through the dragon's gate. High up in the air, he slashed out with his scythe. The sharpness of the blade caused a gust of wind that caused the almost extinguished bonfire to be reignited. Moreover, the black sickle did not have any light. It was like a ghost in the darkness. It cut through the snowflakes and cut through the night. For an origin ability user to have such a realm, even Tianqing and Bai Pinghai had a trace of praise in their eyes. However, Yu Xingyang's expression was particularly heavy. He was a master of saber techniques. Naturally, he could see where the young man's problem lay. This slash was too fierce and fierce. Moreover, the style of the slash was strange and exquisite. Simply speaking, this slash was an all-out attack. Once it was released, there was no way to retreat. If an opponent with a stronger origin energy foundation were to block it, the outcome would be disastrous. Ding! Zhanlong held his sword horizontally across his chest. The sound of the sword and saber colliding was particularly crisp. It was the sound of a jade object hitting a porcelain bowl. However, at this moment, Yu Xingyang's mind was shaken. He could clearly see that although Zhanlong's posture had not changed, there was an imperceptible scratch on his shoulder armor. The young man's saber technique was far more brilliant than he had imagined. However, this Zhanlong was Bai Pinghai's disciple. No matter how weak he was, his attainments in the sword would not be weak. When the young man retreated, his right sleeve was already very tattered. Now it had completely disappeared, turning into fragments that scattered in the air. The young man and Zhanlong were indeed evenly matched opponents. Zhanlong had originally looked down on this rural youth. Only after receiving this slash did he realize that the other party was not weak at all. This time, he could no longer stand still. He had to change from being passive to active. "Be careful!" Zhanlong took the initiative to warn. As his voice fell, his figure flashed out in a strange arc. The sword's shadow seemed to be there and then not, and the sword's light suddenly separated and then reunited. With a kacha sound, the young man could not help but retreat 2 steps. The sickle in his hand had already been broken in 2, and the blade had sunk into the snow. Breaking the weapon basically meant losing. Bai Pinghai had a proud expression. "Little brother, now you have nothing to say, right?" Everyone was also discussing spiritedly. Everyone seemed to be praising Zhanlong's skill. Xiaogu laughed. "Me, Bai Pinghai, and Sect Master Kong will bring the Heaven's Wings in for a body inspection. I don't know if anyone has any objections." What objections could anyone have? Even if they had objections, they would have to change them into nothingness. These 3 people had the most prominent statuses. Who would dare object? Wait. The young man slowly raised his right hand. I haven't used my real weapon yet. This sickle is just something I usually use to cut grass. Bai Pinghai's expression changed. His eyes were filled with killing intent. I've already given you 2 steps, and you still refuse to take them. Seeing his expression, Zhanlong also understood tacitly. He coldly said, "Little brother, you don't want to admit defeat?" The young man twisted his wrist, and a dark golden brilliance flipped between his fingers. At this moment, all the blood in Yu Xingyang's body seemed to freeze. A thunderous voice seemed to resound in his ears. It was so far away, yet so familiar. Does this blade count as this year's #1 blade? This dark golden claw blade was impressively the hero's knife in the hands of Ding Wenhe at the martial arts symposium 7 years ago. 7 years was not a long time, but it was enough for people to forget many things. Thus, when the knife appeared, no one present actually recognized it. People remembered their big brother, the monarch, and glory. However, they could not remember this hero's knife. Perhaps people had forgotten great deeds and noble qualities. Or perhaps people had even forgotten why they had forgotten. However, Yu Xingyang did not forget. The impression this knife had left on him was too deep. It had even changed his life. Now that it had appeared here, this knife seemed to have some kind of mysterious and special connection with him. Of course, in the process of searching for his big brother in Ding Wenhe these years, he had also clearly inquired about the origins of this knife. The knife itself might not be much, but the experience of the knife made him feel deep veneration. In his heart, this knife was no longer as simple as a knife. It was a kind of belief. It was the belief of a group of people. It represented the roots of the grass. It symbolized tenacity. It encouraged these people to never lower their heads and never give up. At this moment, the knife was in the hands of the youth. The dark golden radiance was like a bright star under the snowy night. However, in Yu Xingyang's eyes, the image of the youth had disappeared. He seemed to see his big brother, Miss Wenhe, and many other people holding this knife. They were all standing in the courtyard. Facing all the powerful dignitaries, there was not a trace of fear on their faces. Yu Xingyang suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of hope. That feeling was like the clear sky after the rain, the bright sunshine breaking through the clouds. He was suddenly filled with confidence in this youth, because justice would always prevail. Even Yu Xingyang had such thoughts. How could this youth not have the same thoughts? The hero's knife was in his hands. This knife had been passed down to his generation. He had never failed. This time, the youth took the initiative again. The dark golden light of the knife was like snowflakes that filled the sky, forming a large net that enveloped Zhanlong also flew out. The short sword in his hand turned into a dazzling white light. In a large net, the white light pierced left and right like a swimming dragon. It pierced the large net and made ding-ding-dang-dang sounds. The two figures flashed and intersected. The surging airflow caused the surrounding tables and chairs to fly in all directions. When they flew into the air, they shattered into pieces. The heat energy in the center of the courtyard gradually formed an invisible force field. It constantly spread out circles of waves. The sword light flashed and disappeared in these waves. If one did not know that the two people were fighting inside, the onlookers would definitely suspect that this dazzling scene was the sparkling waves of the lake under the sunlight. The light and shadow merged into one and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The seemingly wave-like blade suddenly retracted. There was another crisp ding sound. This time, the sound was long and drawn out. It was like a moving, clear cry. In the next moment, all the knife light and sword shadows disappeared. The courtyard regained its calm. Yu Xingyang could not help but stand up in excitement. He was unable to suppress his feelings of surprise because the hero's knife was still in the youth's hand. However, the short sword in Zhanlong's hand had disappeared. Zhanlong's right wrist was dripping with blood. It was obvious that he had been cut by the claw knife. In this battle, the victory belonged to the youth in the end. It belonged to the hero's knife that was filled with legends. No matter when and where this knife was, It always needed to be sacrificed with the blood of those who believe themselves to be superior. Only then could it release its true brilliance. Justice, it might be late, but it was never absent. Chapter 261. There were no cheers, no applause. There wasn't even the slightest sound. The entire manor suddenly became as quiet as an empty city. It was unknown when the snowflake stopped and the bonfire was completely extinguished. However, the cold wind suddenly blew again. The wind swept through the forest and the courtyard, and the earth seemed to be sobbing. I'm sorry. The youth spoke with difficulty. His tone was clearly very sad. These words were not said to Jean Long, but to the young girl behind him. He knew that the young girl could not hear him, but he still had to personally say it, because only in this way could he express his respect. In his eyes, the young girl was a living person and not a tool to be trampled on. Only in this way could he express his inner heart. How much he wanted to help the young girl fulfill her wish. But to reach this step, he had really tried his best. This world was sometimes just this cold and cruel. The youth suddenly smiled again. His smile was still so friendly and brilliant, just like the warm spring breeze. It was as if he wanted to melt this ruthless world. He tried his best to comfort the young girl, and his tone became very gentle. Live well. After saying these 5 words, he fell heavily on his back. When the youth fell, Yu Xingyang's heart also sank. It was as if he had fallen into a 10,000-year-old ice cellar. He was too excited and too surprised. He completely did not notice that when a youth cut Jean Long's wrist, Jean Long had also sent his sword into the youth's heart. Only the sword hilt was left outside. The sword blade had already completely pierced through the chest. Good. It was unknown who took the lead, but everyone finally began to applaud. Voices of discussion rose from all directions. Brother Jean Long is really powerful. Since ancient times, heroes have always come from the youth. Yeah, how could the disciple that brother by has taught be weak? That sword was really fast and accurate. It was too beautiful. Yu Xingyang could not hear anything. From head to toe, it was as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water over him. Then his soul was sucked out. He stood there in a daze. He did not know what to say or what to do. He felt that there was no path to take and no place to go. The young girl was now in this demented state. She leaned over the young man's body and cried. But no matter how she shook him, the young man would never wake up again. The corpse's eyes were not closed, but her tears fell into the corpse's eyes drop by drop. However, in this place, on this occasion, no one would care about the tears of peasant girl, much less the existence of someone like her. As long as she was alive, she was no longer a threat to the Tian family. As long as she was alive, she was as good as dead. Amidst the praises, the girl suddenly pulled out the dagger from the boy's chest and fiercely stabbed it into her own heart. She also slowly went limp. Even when she fell to the ground, the young man's eyes were still open. The smile on his face was still bright, as if he was repeating his last words. Live well. It was too difficult to survive, but death was much easier. Yu Xingyang took a deep breath and painfully closed his eyes. He had no right to intervene in the young man's battle, but he did not stop the girl from committing suicide. This was because he understood them. From the moment the young man was killed, the girl's heart had truly died. She had lost all hope and fell into eternal despair. The most ruthless thing in this world was fairness. In fact, it was the most unfair because the price one had to pay was too high. Even if one gave up their life, they would not be able to exchange for justice. Furthermore, justice was not always victorious. Even the eternal sunlight would be covered by dark clouds. Just like Tianqing's private manor, wasn't it currently surrounded by darkness? Even though the banquet resumed its liveliness, the dancers resumed their performance, and the fine wine and delicacies were served, Yu Xingyang suddenly felt very cold. It was a kind of coldness that came from the dead, a coldness that seeped into his bones. The 2 corpses had already been carried away by the guards. No one mentioned what had just happened, as if nothing had happened. Even the red snow was quickly cleaned up. Yu Xingyang silently walked to Tianqing's side. Tianqing was currently toasting Jiaogu and the others with a red face. Brother Tian, Yu Xingyang expressionlessly called out. Tianqing turned around and smiled. Brother Yu, I apologize for my lack of hospitality. Please drink a few more cups. Yu Xingyang cupped his fists. Brother Tian, farewell. Tianqing was surprised. It's still early. Why is Brother Yu leaving? Yu Xingyang did not answer him. He hugged his saber and silently walked out of the manor's gates. He did not want to stay in this place for even a moment longer. This was because he already felt regret. If he had not taken the initiative to speak up, things would not have developed in the opposite direction. Perhaps the young man and young woman would still be alive. Perhaps they would live in humiliation, but it was still much better than dying so tragically. The only thing he could do now was to chase after the guards and take the corpses. No matter what, he hoped that he could personally bury the two of them. At least that would make him feel better. He suddenly realized that he did not even know the names of the young man and young woman. He felt that he was far inferior to the young man. He had the ability, but he did not even have the courage to stand out. He was even inferior to the young woman. The young woman had the courage to face death, but he had been hiding in the crowd from the beginning to the end. What formless divine saber! He was just a dog that looked like a human, but lived like a coward. In his days, the snowstorm intensified. He realized that he had unknowingly walked to the edge of a river in the suburbs. Then, he saw the young man and young woman's corpses. They were lying side by side on a simple raft made of branches and withered grass. There were piles of dry wood on top of the raft. The poor did not even have a coffin after they died. They could only burn it and let their souls drift with the wind. At least they would not be bullied again. Although they had lived a hard life, they had died peacefully. The young man had done what he could, and the young woman had also escaped her tragic fate. Therefore, their expressions now looked very peaceful. It was not easy for a person to die peacefully. For the first time, Yu Xingyang felt a sense of reverence towards death. On the edge of the grass, another young man in ragged clothes was holding a torch. He gently removed the T-shaped claws from the hands of the corpses and used a piece of green grass to carefully wipe them clean. The young man looked even younger, about 12 or 13 years old. However, his expression was unusually calm. He was not angry, nor was he sad. He seemed to have experienced countless joys and sorrows in life. He had also seen through too many life and death situations in the world. He only silently lit the dead wood and then slowly pushed the raft into the water. In the middle of the river, a ball of raging fire was quickly ignited. The flames soared into the sky and danced in all directions. From afar, it looked like colorful butterflies. At the end of the dance, perhaps that was the direction of heaven. The young man knelt by the riverside and put the glossy green bone leaf to his lips. He gently blew a low tune. The tune was slow and beautiful, like a gentle fisherman's song. Under the snowy night on the river, it had a tranquil and profound mood. However, after listening to it for a long time, there was a hint of sadness floating in it, making people unable to control themselves from the sadness. Yu Xingyang slowly walked over from the tune. What song is this? The young man put away the grass and said in a calm voice, This song is called The Original Scenery of Hometown. Yu Xingyang's expression became thoughtful. Perhaps his death is a kind of relief. He won't bear too much. Perhaps his soul can return to his hometown. Yes. The young man stared at the river. The fire on the river slowly extinguished. His eyes seemed to dim. Yu Xingyang sighed slightly. Do you know how he died? The young man was still calm. I know. Yu Xingyang frowned. But you don't look sad. The young man said, Maybe it's not the time to be sad. Yu Xingyang couldn't help but ask why. The young man was silent and said the same thing. Because I want to live well. The more I suffer, the happier those people will be. Yu Xingyang found that the young man in front of him was much stronger than he imagined. These poor children had lived in hardship since they were young. Time had long polished their hearts and minds to be firm and resolute. They won't be happy for long. Yu Xingyang also turned his head to look at the river. His gaze became thoughtful again. Maybe he's right. What's the point of some people fighting for their whole lives? This Shang kingdom is not as prosperous as I see it on the surface. His gaze fell on the young man's hand again. Little brother, can you let me see your blade? The young man finally hesitated. This is not an ordinary blade. I know. Yu Xingyang's expression became sincere. When I was defeated by it for the first time, its first owner didn't even use this blade to attack me. However, I was defeated willingly. The young man's eyes finally revealed a look of horror. Only then did he notice the formless divine blade in Yu Xingyang's arms. You, could it be that you are I am? Yu Xingyang nodded. His tone was very emotional. This is the second time I've seen this blade. I didn't expect to see it in such a situation after 7 years. He couldn't say the rest of the words because his heart was aching, so he couldn't continue. The T-shaped claw blade was quickly in his hand. He looked at it carefully, as if he was admiring a supreme divine weapon. What fortune is there in gathering? What sorrow is there in parting? What joy is there in life? What bitterness is there in death? Yu Xingyang silently read the poem on the blade. The poem wasn't long. There were only 16 words in total. However, he felt as if he was reading his own life. After a long time, he respectfully returned the hero's dagger to the youth. Then, he did something that no one would have thought of. He threw the dagger into the river with a wall-less sound. The young man was also shocked by his shocking action. Why don't you want your blade? Yu Xingyang said seriously, because compared to your blade, I feel that it doesn't deserve to be called a blade. 7 years ago, 7 years later, it's still the same. It hasn't changed. But your blade, the young man wanted to say something, but stopped. Yu Xingyang seemed to know what he wanted to ask. He immediately interrupted him and said leisurely, the formless divine blade only lives up to its name. The hero's blade has a clear conscience. Only a real man deserves a real blade. What use do I have for this formless divine blade? The young man hesitated and said, You want my blade? Yu Xingyang shook his head. I don't have the qualifications to use it. I don't deserve it. You should take it. You should be the successor of this generation, right? This time, the young man was silent for a long time. Then, he slowly said, Before I left, Big Brother told me that if I encounter any misfortune, I must use this blade well. If I can't hold on, I must leave the blade to those who really need it. I must protect it well, use it, love it, and fight hard for the people we protect. I must never retreat. Yu Xingyang sighed and said, He is indeed worthy of the glory of Big Brother. He is also a real Big Brother. The young man nodded. Yes. Yu Xingyang took a deep breath. Excuse me, may I know Big Brother's name? The young man hesitated for a moment. Then, he quietly said, his surname is Zheng. His name is Zheng Ming. Although the name was ordinary, Yu Xingyang repeated it repeatedly. It was as if he wanted to remember it in his heart. The name of each generation's owner was worth remembering forever. Zheng Ming, or proof. Did Zheng Ming really prove something? Or did he need someone else to prove something? After a moment, he continued to ask, What about you? Little brother, may I know your name as well? The young man suddenly raised his head. An indescribable sharp light suddenly appeared in his eyes. At this moment, his whole body seemed to glow. He appeared calm, confident, and determined. My name is Ding Ming. Chapter 262. The bonfire was finally extinguished, but the people in the square were still unwilling to leave. Qiao and the others were still dancing and singing. Ding Ming was also unwilling to leave. He reached out with his right hand and flicked his fingers a few times, retracting his claws back into his sleeve. He was still expressionless, but under the night sky, his eyes seemed even dimmer. Little Rascal sighed. She didn't know how to console him, so she could only try to find a topic to talk about. Ding Ming. Why was the older brother of the previous generation named Zheng Ming? Ding Ming sighed. Because he lived too idealistically. He always believed that this was a beautiful world, so he was named Zheng Ming. The meaning was to let him live a more understanding life. Then what about you? Little Rascal's interest was piqued. Why were you named Ding Ming? Ding Ming said, It's because I understood things too well that I was named Ding Ming. Little Rascal pondered for a moment before asking, Does that mean you shouldn't understand things too well? Ding Ming sighed. Sometimes it's not good to live too well, but what I understand is that you should never be kept in the dark. That's why my name is Ding Ming. Little Rascal sighed. She was at a loss for words. She finally understood why Ding Ming was still brooding over Little Four's death. Along the way, Ding Ming's companions might have agreed to travel together, but they all left for various reasons. In the end, only Ding Ming was left behind. Loneliness. Only when one's wish couldn't be fulfilled would one deeply feel its existence. It was like a person's shadow. If happiness was the sun, then loneliness was the other side of you. You could never shake it off. As long as you've experienced happiness, then you've also experienced deep loneliness. Perhaps you'll continue to be lonely forever. ACT 5570, you're actually not lonely, Xiao AI suddenly said. A Xiao had walked over with Little Wei by her side. A Xiao's smile was very happy, even happier than usual. Ding Ming, why are you in a daze here? A Xiao greeted him enthusiastically. Don't you want to dance with us? Ding Ming chuckled. If I dance for a minute, I might fall over a dozen times. A Xiao also smiled and said, It's all right, I'll teach you. Ding Ming quickly waved his hand. Forget it. Xiao Wei will accompany you. Xiao Wei did not dare to call Ding Ming by his name. He lowered his head and said, Mr. Ting. Ding Ming smiled. He could tell that Xiao Wei and Ah Xiao were closer than the others. But this was also good. Humans had to look forward and couldn't live in the past forever. Perhaps Xiao Wei and Ah Xiao would be able to shake off the shadows of their past and become friends, lovers, or even partners. No matter what, they would have a new direction and hope. Let's go too. Ding Ming turned and walked towards the spaceport building. Let's take a break and clean up. We'll wait for Commander Fong's good news. While he was patiently waiting for news, someone else was waiting as well. But they were waiting anxiously. Chu Zhongyu sat on a long sofa and turned his head to look at the door at the end of the corridor. This was a corridor filled with the atmosphere of a modern office. The decoration was simple, plain, and reserved, but no one dared to underestimate this place. This was the conference room of Haitian Group's headquarters. Chu Zhongyu had lost count of how many times he had looked up. He had waited for 2 whole hours. Fortunately, the door was finally opened. A beautiful female assistant walked out with a mini optical computer. She said politely, Young Master Zhongyu, Mr. Chu has asked for you to enter. Ask him to enter instead of invite him in. This was enough to show the attitude of the top brass of Haitian Group towards him. This conference room was the same one Chu Yifeng had sent back from Sea Heaven's Pole Island using a long-distance projection. It was still as luxurious and grand as ever. The square conference table was still as simple and exquisite as ever. Nothing had changed. Even the people sitting at the table were still the same. The only change was that Chu Yifeng had returned to Haitian Group and was sitting at the end of the table. The person standing behind him was Lan Bing. Lan Bing was still cold and expressionless, but she had changed her chi pao into a black suit that was exactly the same as the female assistant's. Her hair was tied up, and she had light makeup on her face. She was full of classic beauty, and she had suddenly turned into a white-collar beauty with an outstanding fragrance. This was something that couldn't be helped. At the headquarters of the Haitian Group, the etiquette was even stricter. Here, no one was allowed to be undressed. The beautiful middle-aged woman was also there. When she saw the frowning Chu Zhongyu come in, she gently knocked on the table. Sit down. Chu Zhongyu's position was directly opposite the white-haired old man, and he was alone. It looked like the other 3 groups of people had surrounded him to judge him. There was no helping it. The matter of the Bandit Corps on Cyprus Ancient Planet was too big. Not many people in the Federation knew about it, but Haitian Group had lost an intermediate war elder and a beginner war elder because of it. It was the man in the suit and Hao Feng. This attracted the attention of the top brass. And the real reason for the 2 war elders' deaths was laughable. Chu Zhongyu had feelings for Su Mengqing and then contacted Lu Ming to go to Cyprus Ancient Planet. The 2 behemoths, Shang Hao and Xing Hong, were also involved. The matter itself was not that big, but it involved a lot of people, so the beautiful middle-aged woman had to reprimand him. Xiao Yu, can you spend more time on group affairs? Don't think about women all the time. Have you never seen a woman before? Chu Zhongyu drooped his head. Third Anne, I know I was wrong this time. I shouldn't have gone to Cyprus Ancient Planet. Third Ant's expression looked pained. How many times did your mother scold you when she was still alive? But you're getting worse every time. This time you even killed 2 people. It's time for us to send you out to train. The so-called sending you out was like Chu Yifeng in the past. They threw you a few starships and let you go to a remote galaxy to manage the group's assets. It sounded interesting, but in reality, it was an ascetic life. Chu Yifeng was lucky and got the memory of the K virus. In less than a year, he was called back to the HQ. But Chu Zhongyu was not Chu Yifeng. It was likely that he would not return for 8 to 10 years. Hearing this, Chu Zhongyu panicked and quickly raised his hand. Third Ant, I know I was wrong. I swear I won't do it again. Cough. Opposite Third Ant, a middle-aged man coughed softly. There was no other meaning in this. It was just to remind Third Ant that her acting was not very good. It was nothing more than a scare in front of the old man. Chu Zhongyu would then make a statement and deal with the situation. But this time was different. Although the matter was small, there were many problems. The old man would not let them pass easily. Sure enough, the white-haired old man had been flipping through the light screen on the table. He was the real helmsman of Haitian Group, Chu Mingliang. All the major decisions of the entire group were made by him. After flipping through for a long time, he slowly turned his head and said in a slow tone, "The memory of the K virus is not complete. Half of it was stolen." Hearing this, Chu Yifeng had to speak even if he did not want to. Yes, it was stolen by Ding Ming. Chu Mingliang said, according to the data, Ding Ming also participated in the acquisition of Cyprus Ancient Planet. Yes, the person who spoke this time was Third Ant. This news was not a secret at all to people at their level. There was no evidence to show that the man in the suit was killed by Ding Ming. However, the fact that Ding Ming survived the explosion of the Hercules armor, while the man in the suit was reduced to ashes, was very telling. Chu Mingliang suddenly laughed. When he didn't laugh, others would only feel pressured. But when he laughed, it made them feel even more guilty than when he didn't laugh. The person who discovered the K virus in the K8 system was this Ding Ming. The one who escaped was also this Ding Ming. The one who went back and found the memory was also this Ding Ming. After that, this Ding Ming caused trouble in the Celestial Wolf Core. Then he went to Cyprus Ancient Planet to steal the inverse source crystal and killed 2 of our group's war supremacies. It seems that the way you usually do things is the same as when I was young. Chu Yifeng sighed, and his voice was very low. Old man, I know you are blaming me. Chu Mingliang ignored him and looked at Lan Bing instead. Lan Bing's report has already reached me. She repeatedly reminded everyone not to underestimate this person, but you all have suffered losses again and again. Miss Lan Bing is not bad. Lan Bing lowered her head slightly to show her gratitude. Chu Mingliang said in a deep voice, from today onwards, Lan Bing will no longer be your secretary. She will be transferred to the deputy supervisor of the K virus project. She will assist Little Lei in following up on the progress of the project and report directly to me. When this decision was announced, everyone at the table had different expressions. Chu Yifeng did not have any expression, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Third Ant and Chu Zhongyu looked a little happy. Lan Bing was Chu Yifeng's right-hand woman. With this transfer, Chu Yifeng's power would be greatly reduced. Little Lei was the middle-aged man who had coughed earlier. His name was Chu Lei, and he had always been the person in charge of the K virus project. However, the project progress had not been smooth since the beginning. Now that Lan Bing had been inserted into the project, it could only mean that Chu Mingliang was not satisfied with him. His face was dark, and he did not say anything. He stared at the table in front of him as if he was thinking about something. Chu Mingliang continued, Yifeng, you've been working hard in the K8 department for the past year. It's time for you to take a break. Use this time to calm yourself down. You can also go out for a walk. I suggest you go to KV 303 to relax. He said he was giving him a break, but in reality, he wanted him to reflect on himself. As long as the location of planet KV 303 was mentioned, it meant that Chu Mingliang already knew everything that had happened. Haitian Group also cared about its reputation. In the eyes of people at Chu Mingliang's level, The tragedy at the Green Arrow base was because Chu Yifeng could not restrain his subordinates and allow them to do whatever they wanted. Since the accident had already happened, it was time to take back the power in his hands and go back to face the wall to reflect. Chu Yifeng was like a drum. He did not need a heavy hammer to beat it. As long as this reminder was given, how could he not understand? So Chu Yifeng took a deep breath and slowly stood up. He bowed to Chu Ming Liang and said, "Okay, I will remember your advice. Thank you for your guidance." After that, he straightened his suit and slowly walked towards the door of the meeting room. This place did not need him anymore. Chapter 263. As soon as Chu Yifeng left, Chu Ming Liang gestured to Lan Bing. "Miss Lan Bing, please take a seat." Naturally, Lan Bing sat in Chu Yifeng's seat. This meant that she had now replaced Chu Yifeng and officially took over his authority. Although the Haitian group was controlled by the Chu family, Chu Ming Liang had always valued talents. He usually promoted people without any restrictions and did not allow any other Chu family member to object. Seeing the young and beautiful Lan Bing sitting opposite her, Third Aunt could not help but feel a little depressed. She took the initiative to smile. "I remember that Miss Lan Bing is only 31 years old this year. You are so young. I really envy you. Although I was young once, you are the future of the group." Although she sounded envious, she was actually questioning. Not only was Lan Bing young, but she was also an outsider. Was it appropriate for her to sit in Chu Yifeng's seat? However, Lan Bing still remained silent. Chu Ming Liang ignored Third Aunt and said to Chu Lei, "Suspend the K-virus experiment." Chu Lei was a little surprised. "Isn't it a little too early to give up the experiment?" Chu Ming Liang's gaze fell on Lan Bing. "Miss Lan Bing, what do you think?" Lan Bing then slowly said, "According to the feedback, the other half of the memory chip has fallen into the hands of the Norse Empire's Colonel Feng Rufei. I'm afraid it's impossible to get it back now." Chu Ming Liang's face suddenly showed a bitter smile. "I didn't expect this guy to still work for the Empire's military," Lan Bing continued. "However, Ding Meng has been in contact with the memory chip the most. According to my observation, he went from an ordinary person to a war venerable in just a year after he came into contact with a memory chip. I think this should be the change brought to him by the memory chip. This is also the main direction of our group's research. Instead of wasting time on experiments, it's better to use our energy on Ding Meng. Also, we can't treat him the same way we did in the past. I suggest we invite him to our group." Chu Ming Liang pondered and said, "Where is Ding Meng now?" Lan Bing said, "If I'm not mistaken, he should be at the Green Arrow Base KV-303. Chu Ming Liang then turned to Chu Lei. "Are you confident in inviting Ding Meng to Haitian group?" This time, it was invited back, not brought back. The nature was completely different. Even if Chu Lei was given 100 guts, he wouldn't dare to say no. But since Chu Ming Liang insisted on asking, he could only bite the bullet and reply, "I'll do my best." Clearly, Chu Ming Liang was not satisfied with such an answer. He clasped his hands together and sighed. In a few years, the Federation's Night Luminescent Pearl 5 project will be launched. The time left for us is almost 0. How about this? I'll set a time frame for you. 1 year. 1 year shouldn't be a problem, right? Chu Lei also took a deep breath. "No problem, old master. I promise to complete the mission." Only then did Chu Ming Liang turn his gaze to Third Aunt. "Xiao Rou, make the arrangements. Zhong Yu will depart in 5 days to replace Zi Chun at K-12. This, Third Aunt, and Chu Zhongyu were dumbfounded. This was a classic case of being sent out. They couldn't run even if they wanted to. They thought that once Chu Yifeng was dealt with, they would be safe and sound. Who knew that Chu Ming Liang didn't forget about them at all? Third Aunt asked carefully, "Grandfather, Zhongyu is still young. He doesn't know much." Chu Ming Liang immediately interrupted her. "Do you have a problem?" No. Third Aunt felt a chill run down her spine and quickly changed her words. "I'll make the arrangements right away." Chu Ming Liang nodded. "Then that's all for today. Everyone else can leave. Lan Bing, stay." Third Aunt and the others could only get up resentfully. Chu Zhongyu hung his head dejectedly, like a rooster whose neck had been bent. Chu Ming Liang slowly left his seat only after the door to the meeting room was closed. When he stood up, Lan Bing naturally couldn't sit still. She could only follow suit. Chu Ming Liang paced back and forth by the table, his hands behind his back, as if he was thinking about something. After a long time, he slowly opened his mouth. You should know that I have never interfered with the private lives of people of your generation. Lan Bing's expression remained calm. So young Master Feng is taking a long vacation this time? Chu Ming Liang nodded, clearly satisfied with Lan Bing's answer. It was good to talk to smart people. But when private matters are involved in corporate affairs, it usually doesn't end well. The incident on planet KV-303 has put a lot of pressure on our corporation from the Federation. He paused and sighed. Sometimes, the birth of a big incident is often brewed by many small things. Your report is very good. This Ding Meng, we shouldn't underestimate him. Lan Bing nodded. Grandfather, do you need me to do anything? Chu Ming Liang suddenly stared at her, his gaze sharp. Do you think Chu Lei can invite Ding Meng back in a year's time? Lan Bing didn't answer immediately this time. Instead, she pondered for a moment before saying, Mr. Chu, I'm sorry. I can't evaluate the results of a mission like this. Chu Ming Liang continued to stare at her. But this is your suggestion. Lan Bing sighed slightly. It's all about luck. It's not something I can do. Since small things have already happened, a big incident is bound to happen. Chu Ming Liang showed a thoughtful expression. You mean to say that since things have progressed to this point, inviting Ding Meng is only a natural choice? Lan Bing said, Actually, there's no other choice. This meant that the search for the memory bank of the K virus had been going in the wrong direction from the beginning. Now that things had developed to this point, they had no choice but to do so. The so-called luck of the moment was nothing more than a matter of fate. Since they had chosen the wrong direction, why not go back and start from the beginning? Of course, there must be a deeper reason why Haitian Group was willing to spend nearly 20 years searching for the K virus. Lan Bing also knew that Chu Ming Liang wouldn't reveal this secret to her. She seemed to have a high status in Jitian Group, but once she entered the upper echelons of Haitian Group, her status was actually very awkward. The reason for this was because of Chu Yifeng. Chu Yifeng could be considered a true genius, and the upper echelons were willing to train him. However, ever since he fell in love with Lan Bing a few years ago, he started to pursue her crazily. Because of this, Chu Yifeng even privately rejected his own marriage. Of course, Chu Yifeng's marriage wasn't something he could decide on his own. It had to be a marriage between a large corporation. However, because Chu Yifeng did this, he was immediately sent to the K8 series by Chu Ming Liang. Originally, everyone thought that he wouldn't be able to come back for 8 to 10 years. Who knew that he only needed a year to bring back the memory bank of the K virus? This made Chu Ming Liang have to reevaluate Chu Yifeng's ability. Chu Yifeng's ability wasn't something that could be evaluated. Instead, it was Lan Bing who caught Chu Ming Liang's attention. From the moment the memory bank of the K virus appeared until now, everything was done by Lan Bing. At this moment, Chu Ming Liang was very satisfied with Lan Bing's answer. This little girl not only had a calm mind, but also a humble heart. His gaze finally became gentle. I want you to do something, Lan Bing said. Mr. Chu, please tell me. Chu Ming Liang said, for a period of time, you don't have to go anywhere. Just use my private workshop to cultivate alone. Understood, Mr. Chu. Although Lan Bing's face was expressionless, her heart kept sinking. The conversation between the two would have been confusing to other people, but if Third Aunt was present, she would have to admire Chu Ming Liang's shrewdness. Chu Ming Liang was currently at the helm of Haitian Group. No matter how strong his overall strength was, there would be a day when he would have to give up his position. In fact, Chu Ming Liang had been thinking about this problem for many years. There was no need to think about the second-generation successor, but the third-generation successor was Chu Yifeng's generation. Chu Yifeng was undoubtedly the most promising of the four brothers. The other three couldn't compare at all. In the end, Chu Yifeng gave up a bright future and insisted on mixing with a strange woman like Lan Bing. This made the other three see the light at the end of the tunnel. In terms of qualifications, Chu Zhongyu definitely wasn't on the list, but with the support of his third aunt, things were different. The various intricate relationships within Haitian group couldn't be explained in a few words. In the operation of a large group, high-end decision-making was the most important, but the overall strength of the group still depended on the mainstay. Third aunt didn't have the ability to influence decision-making, but she had enough confidence to control the power in the middle. Now that Chu Zhongyu had been sent out, and Chu Yifeng had been given a long vacation, Chu Ming Liang didn't promote the other two, but arranged for an insignificant outsider like Lan Bing to come in. He even wanted to provide resources to make her stronger. This definitely wasn't Chu Ming Liang taking a fancy to a young girl at his age. It was a warning to everyone. Instead of putting your selfish thoughts into infighting, why don't you think of ways to perform well? Tearing each other down is just internal friction. Healthy competition is the way to go. If Lan Bing really followed Chu Ming Liang, sooner or later, she would become a competitive force that no one dared to underestimate. And if Lan Bing really did end up marrying Chu Yifeng, then there would be a lot of fun, because Chu Zhongyu and the other two brothers wouldn't be able to make a comeback. But at this moment, Lan Bing couldn't feel happy at all. Chu Ming Liang's actions were nothing more than for her to integrate into the Chu family circle. Then, the chances of her being together with Chu Yifeng would become more and more likely. This was completely different from what she really wanted. The reason was there. She didn't like people like Chu Yifeng at all. This was something that couldn't be helped. If you wanted a man to like a woman, then that man might like many different types of women. But if you wanted a woman to like a man, then that woman probably wouldn't look at any other man except that man. In any case, the type of man that she, Lan Bing, liked wasn't Chu Yifeng's type. It was just a pity that Chu Yifeng didn't understand this principle. Most men didn't understand either. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't understand, but that they didn't want to believe. They always thought that as long as they were sincere enough, they would be able to open a door. They always thought that if they moved the heavens and moved the earth, they would be able to obtain a so-called happy ending. In fact, that was all a lie. When can you start? Chu Ming Liang asked. Lan Bing said, I need 5 days to prepare. Chu Ming Liang nodded. All right, I'll give you 5 days. Lan Bing lowered her head. Thank you, Mr. Chu, for your generosity. Chapter 264. Blue Moon. This was the central planet of the Holy Grail Federation's Azure Star system. Looking from space, this terrestrial planet was like a floating sky blue gem, extremely beautiful and moving. 800,000 kilometers away from the Blue Moon planet, an extremely large international space station was floating in space. Its appearance was similar to the Sky Wolf Corps' Meteor City's star ring. With the star ring as the core extended 16 star rings of the same shape in 16 different directions, and so on. Every star ring extended outwards, layer after layer, circle after circle, like countless giant umbrellas forming a giant steel net that dominated the sky. It was natural and magnificent. This was the Blue Moon planet's Skynet International Space Station. Compared to this Skynet, the H-shaped, War City space station of the Norse Empire's TT-12 planet paled in comparison. There was no comparison at all. After all, Blue Moon was considered a large second-class central planet in the entire Federation. Therefore, the defense force of this space station was also quite large. It could accommodate 30,000 ship-class units entering and exiting every day. There was 1 resident super fleet, 3 special-class fleets, 18 first-class patrol fleets, 30 second-class patrol fleets, and countless mobile units. If Skynet was like an umbrella, then these ship-class units were like cellular molecules swimming under the umbrella. One could imagine the size of this space station and the importance of Blue Moon. From another point of view, this was one of the reasons why Ding Meng and Fang Zhenghao were angry with Zhuang Weiming. For a space fortress like Skynet Space Station, not to mention a fleet, just a few armed forces would be enough to turn the broken ships of Cyprus' ancient star into ashes in a few seconds. As a result, they were all gathered here and did not care about outer space at all. However, this could not be helped. There was only a one-word difference between refugees and citizens, but the treatment was worlds apart. Liu was now in the 221 VIP waiting area of the Skynet space station. Her task today was to receive an interstellar refugee from outer space. Liu was 35 years old this year, which was the best years of a woman's life. In fact, she was also very lucky. After graduation, she entered the famous Star Rainbow International Group's Blue Moon branch. After 10 years of hard work, she was finally promoted from a small office secretary to the Deputy Minister of General Affairs Department 3. This position sounded high-end, but in fact, it was not the case at all. First of all, the word deputy explained everything. Moreover, it was the third department of the Ministry of Affairs, not the first or second department. Obviously, the position was not that important. Besides, what did the General Affairs Department do? To put it bluntly, it was a department that specialized in errands, running errands, and providing services. Not to mention the arrogant R&D department, the market and trade department, and the energy survey department. Even the public relations department, legal department, and field department of the corporation would raise their chins when they saw them. However, Liu was still very diligent. She knew that opportunities were only given to those who worked hard. The Star Rainbow Group had always valued only two kinds of employees. One was those who were particularly capable, and the other was those who were not very capable but worked very hard. Therefore, when she heard that there was a reception task, she rushed to the space station early in the morning to wait. Although it was to receive an interstellar refugee, the work list on the wristwatch showed that this refugee had a special pass from the Azure system and a Level 3 VIP card from the Star Rainbow Group. He was accompanied by 3 attendants. A Level 3 VIP card was not a big deal, but a special pass from the Azure system was. This was not something that ordinary people could get. Liu thought that a big shot must be visiting Blue Pole Star City today, so she took out a mirror from her small bag to touch up her makeup. She had to leave a good impression on this person. Liu was very confident in her appearance and figure. She was the type of pretty girl from a humble family, so it was usually very difficult for her to arouse the dislike of others. Moreover, she had specially chosen a generous and decent set of interstellar clothes to change into today. Her whole person was quite energetic. At this moment, the announcement above the waiting area finally sounded. Passengers boarding the spaceship GY 1129, please pay attention. There's still 3 minutes left before we arrive at the terminal. Blue Moon Stars International Space Station, Skynet, welcomes your arrival. We wish you a pleasant journey. Liu was shocked. She quickly turned on the projection function of the wristwatch. A large blue light screen rose, and only 2 large crystal words were displayed on it. Ding Meng. With a whoosh, the circular metal door at the exit opened to both sides, and many people walked out. Those who were able to come out of the VIP passage were naturally not ordinary people. Liu's gaze quickly searched through the crowd. She specifically scanned through the crowd of people who were dressed in beautiful clothes. Big shots usually dressed like that when they went out. They would be surrounded by attendants. Unfortunately, she did not see such a scene because a cold and indifferent voice suddenly appeared beside her and gave her a fright. Hello, I am Ding Meng. Liu turned his head to take a look and was immediately stunned on the spot. This guy who called himself Ding Meng was not tall, and his face was average. He looked to be around 20 years old. It was fine if he was so young, but the key point was that Ding Meng's clothes were too shabby. His linen clothes were draped over his body like animal skin, and there were even a few patches on his pants. His boots were slightly better. They were obviously combat boots made of high-conductive fiber, but they were unbelievably tattered. For a moment, Liu's brain short-circuited. This was the big shot who visited the Starbow Group. In fact, Ding Meng's clothes were considered good. KV-303 was really too poor. When he came back from Cypress Grove, his clothes were torn and stuck to his body like pieces of paper. Ah Qiao had repaired his pants stitch by stitch before he left, and she had even washed them clean. Meng Yin had also warned Ding Meng in advance. In any case, one had to pay more attention to one's image in the Federation, especially in a big central city like Blue Pole Star City. The nature of this was like a country bumpkin entering a city. It was fine to be a little rustic, but one could not be too unconventional. Being high profile had never been Ding Meng's style, so he dressed like this. If Ding Ming was shabby, then the Russian was even shabbier. He was also wearing refugee clothes. He had been smoking for a long time without paying attention, and his chest had been burned by the butt of the cigarette. Compared to the rustic looks of Ding Ming and the Russian, the four-eyed man was more handsome. His yellow suit was quite impressive. At least the upper half of his body was the image of a successful person, but the lower half of his body was unbearable. He wore animal skin sandals and a pair of brown shorts. He had a pair of black-rimmed glasses from God knows where. This time, he did not dare to use the excuse of "my eyes are not clear. I did not see clearly again." Among the four people, the one who looked slightly more normal was Meng Yan, who had the appearance of Lu Fei, but she was not much better. After all, she was someone who followed Ding Ming and was always on the move. It was very tiring. How could she have the energy to fix her personal image? Meng Yan's blazing shark spaceship had collected a lot of fashionable clothes, but she still did not have the courage to wear them because this was the first time she had returned to the Holy Grail Federation that she had been yearning for day and night. Women all had the same thoughts when it came to clothes. What style was popular for women in big cities? What if I was laughed at? Therefore, when these four people appeared in front of her, Liu was immediately dumbfounded. However, when she saw the pass and VIP card in Ding Ming's hands, Liu's good professional qualities quickly reacted. She revealed a sweet smile and said, "Hello, Mr. Ting. My name is Liu, and I'm a staff member of the Starbao Group. I've been waiting for your arrival." Liu's work ID and personal information quickly appeared on the screen, which could be considered as indicating her identity. Ding Ming nodded and said, "Thank you. You've worked hard." "Haha, you're welcome." Liu gestured and said, "Mr. Ting, our group's shuttle is ready. This way, please." The Starbao Group's shuttle was, of course, a small transport ship. This spaceship, called Rainbow Bird, was at least 3 times smaller than the mystic bird commonly seen in outer space. It was shaped like a sharp and narrow butterfly, and its outer steel plates were made of high-grade alloys. Just by looking at its azure and translucent color, one could tell that this spaceship's technology was extremely high. The spaceship had a purple starry sky pattern printed on it. This was the symbol of the Starbao Group. This spaceship had special privileges on the space station and could directly pick up people. There was no need for Ding Ming and company to take a public safety spaceship. That would be too troublesome, as it would take 6 hours to land at the ground spaceport. However, this Rainbow Bird only needed an hour to send Ding Ming and company directly to the central square of the Starbao Group. As this was the first time they had stepped into the Federation's territory, it was inevitable that everyone was a little excited. This azure planet was much better than the dead silent planet, Planet V4, and Bogger Planet. At the very least, when they saw this color, they felt exceptionally happy. After the Rainbow Bird entered the atmosphere, its ion engine was switched to an ordinary electronic engine, and it slowly began to descend into the ocean. Liu did not chat with the four of them along the way, but she still had a good eye. She noticed Ding Ming and Meng Yan. Although their clothes were not very good, the black and white cylindrical backpacks on their shoulders were definitely not ordinary goods. Obviously, they were high-capacity anti-gravity backpacks with a special structure. Their clothes were not very good, but their backpacks were so particular. Liu had a rough idea in her heart. These people were most likely combat-type origin ability users. Someone in the group must have taken a fancy to their uniqueness and specially invited them to Blue Pole Star City. Among the galaxies near outer space, the Green Arrow Core was the closest to Blue Pole Star City. Perhaps they were the hunters of the Green Arrow Core. Seeing that Ding Ming was so young, he must be a potential stock that the group had taken a fancy to. Liu did not know that her random guesses had roughly guessed Ding Ming's situation. Since they had entered the Federation's territory, the four-eyed man and the Russian no longer dared to smoke indiscriminately and kick each other's butts. The two of them sat in their seats in the cabin and patiently waited for the landing. Of course, they did not have to wait too long. The crystal glass advertisements on the edge of the cabin were quickly removed, revealing the reality outside the window. Liu stood up first and politely stretched out her hand. Chapter 265. This was a dreamlike city. Skyscrapers thousands of meters high rose from the ground and pierced the clouds. On the ground, all kinds of strange buildings were scattered among the mountains and lakes. Thousands of flying cars, shuttles, aircraft, hovering trains, public transport vehicles, and all kinds of miniature spaceships that Ding Meng and the others could not even imagine were shuttling back and forth between the sky and the ground like countless streams of air. It was simply an indescribably wonderful and spectacular sight. This was only a corner of the eastern sea of Blue Pole Star City, but was already a huge world of steel and jungle. Looking from the Rainbow Bird, a huge and strange building was built in an open space on the cliff of the sea. How should it be described? The bottom of the building was like a giant ring of a transport ship that was parked there. Starting from its back, all kinds of buildings rose up like building blocks. There were regular buildings that towered into the clouds, as well as all kinds of cylindrical, fortress-like buildings stacked on top of each other. Not only were there gaps between them, but there were also circular transport roads that connected them like a roller coaster. From afar, the whole building looked like a modern castle that was full of metal texture. When they flew closer, they discovered that this place was no smaller than a medium-sized starship. If it was completed, it would be a small city. And in this corner of Blue Pole Star City, it was nothing at all. This place was the Blue Pole Star City branch of the Star Rainbow Group. A total of 156 branches like this were set up in all the main cities of the Holy Grail Federation. It was enough to show how terrifying the financial resources of one of the largest groups in the Federation were. Ding Meng also secretly sighed. When he was on the heavenly fate, he was still calm. He was not arrogant enough to go against the Star Rainbow Group and Sheng Hao. Looking at the buildings of the Star Rainbow Group, even if you beat Ding Meng to death, he would not believe that there would not be any origin ability experts in the center of such a large group. Behind the Star Rainbow Group's branch building, there was an even larger helipad. This helipad alone was 10 times larger than the spaceport of planet KV-303. It was built like a beautiful and unique back garden. Numerous shuttles and aircraft were parked in designated spaces. At a glance, there were no less than 1,000 shuttles and aircraft. This was the central square. There were a total of 1,568 staff members in this branch of the corporation. Including the visitors and other people who came in every day, the number of visitors exceeded 3,000. Mauzi could not help but say, "Isn't it a bit of a waste of space to have just over 1,000 people in such a big place?" The four-eyed man couldn't help but say, "Idiot, do you think we're still in outer space?" This kind of place is fully intelligent, and there are very few places that require manual labor. I told you to watch more TV, but you only know how to King crash and kill your mother. The Russian was furious. Mother Kerr, the TV broke last week, and the base's signal is weak. If I don't smoke, why would I watch? Besides, my eyes are blurred, so I can't see clearly. As the two of them argued, not only did Ding Meng smile, but even Liu also smiled. Of course, Liu revealed a proud smile. Everyone who worked here was proud to be a member of the Starbao Corporation. Thinking back to when Liu first found out that he had been recruited by the Starbao Corporation, he did not sleep at all that night. After the spaceship landed in the central square, Ding Meng and the others also looked around curiously. There were not many people in the square, and everyone was well-dressed and elegant. They must be the staff of the Starbao Corporation. However, they were curious, and the others were even more curious about them. From time to time, they would turn their heads to look at Liu. Their eyes were full of astonishment, as if asking, "Are you a refugee? How did you get here?" "Mr. Ting, let's go in." Liu ignored the astonished gazes around him. Okay, Ding Meng obviously did not care. He had never cared about what others thought of him. However, as soon as they entered the reception hall on the first floor, a man in a suit came up to them. He looked at Liu and said in a strange tone, "Yo, Xiao Yu, weren't you going to receive our corporation's VIPs? Did you not receive them? Did you just randomly pull a few people to make up the numbers?" Liu looked very embarrassed. There was no way around it. Ding Meng and the others were dressed in a flashy style. Suits Uniforms, animal skins, and fabrics were all gathered together. The man in the suit laughed again and said, "Shall you, if you want to complete the mission and get contribution points, you should spend some money. If you want to pull a few people, pull a few normal people." What's wrong with these guys? Did you go to the underground slums in the north and call them here? Are they your relatives or friends? Yinyu, are you done? Liu said with a red face. These are our corporation's VIPs. Please watch your words. The man in the suit laughed. Our corporation's VIPs seem to be a little poor. They can't even afford to buy clothes. With his ridicule, Meng Yin was a little unhappy. She was about to step forward when she was pulled back by the four-eyed man. Let Mao do it. Mao Zi was the most experienced in dealing with this kind of thing. He took a big step forward and said casually, "Brother, we are a little poor, but do you know that you are a little miserable?" The man in the suit stopped smiling. "I don't know how I'm miserable." Mao Zi lit up a dead woman's cigarette and breathed out a mouthful of blue smoke. "You don't know? Then you should ask Su Mingxing. We didn't want to come to this damn place, but she insisted on inviting us. I had no choice but to reluctantly make this trip." The man in the suit looked at him from head to toe and couldn't help but sneer. "With your virtue, you can know Miss Su? You must be living in a dream, right?" Mao Zi continued to smoke. "On air, I will remember you. If you don't believe me, Miss Su will come later. If you don't believe me, you can ask her yourself." After saying this, Mao Zi followed Ding Meng and the others and left. The man in the suit was stunned. Was this group of weirdos really invited by Miss Su? Actors? New actors in the entertainment circle? Came here to shoot a movie? The man in the suit suddenly had such an idea in his mind. He stood there in a daze. Nightmare in the shuttle couldn't help but ask, "Miss Li, who is this person?" Li Yu's expression was a little unnatural. "Yin Yu, the deputy head of General Department 2. Our two departments don't have a good relationship. The internal employees of the Star Rainbow Group were paid according to their contribution points. The contribution points were evaluated according to their usual workload and the amount of profit they generated. The greater the contribution, the more the salary each season." Yin Yu was not originally so sarcastic, but this year, General Department 3's business volume had increased dramatically, and there was a slight momentum to surpass General Department 2's. At this rate, the contribution points of General Department 3 would surpass General Department 2's in, at most, half a year. Therefore, both sides were fighting for business. As for the usual sarcastic remarks, that was a small matter. The task of receiving Ding Meng was actually a small one. The contribution points were not big, and General Department 2 didn't care at all. Interstellar refugees did not exist in the eyes of Yin Yu and the others. If Su Mingxing came to the Blue Moon branch, they would probably all be dispatched. However, Liu thought differently. No matter what, it was still contribution points. It was a little less, but it was better than nothing. After all, many little drops make a mickle. What if these four people caused a big commotion in the group? She would also increase her contribution points. Of course, this was just a thought. She didn't have any hope at all. The shuttle ladder only rose to the 31st floor. For the entire center, this floor was still the lowest floor. After the door opened, there was a spacious rooftop. The rooftop's greenery was very well done. There was a garden full of blooming tulips in the center. After passing through the garden, they came to a square metal building. This was the Energy R&D Department 9. According to the task list on the wristwatch, Liu only needed to bring Ding Meng and the others here, and the task would be completed. This was a completely sealed technology hall. It seemed like there wasn't even a single piece of crystal glass. The surrounding walls were cast from an unknown metal, giving off a thick and oppressive feeling. It could be seen that the hall's facilities were very complete. There was a control panel, a sensor cabin, a tool table, a simulation system, and rows of shelves and intelligent inlays in the walls. It should be said that Ding Meng and the others had seen everything, and there were also some that they had never seen before. The problem was that this hall could only be described in one word: messy. It was a complete mess. All kinds of equipment and tools were scattered everywhere. Boxes of materials were piled up everywhere, and all kinds of strange things were thrown on the ground. This Energy R&D Department 9 was like a large, messy warehouse. The key point was that there wasn't even a shadow in this warehouse. Liu cleared her throat and shouted, Mr. Cuddle, are you there? A thunderous voice immediately sounded from the depths of the shelves. Which blind fool is causing trouble here? The tone sounded irritable, and the voice sounded very old. Liu had explained when they were in the rooftop garden that this Mr. Cuddle was the person who was assigned by the higher-ups of the Starbow Group to meet Ding Ming. However, his temper wasn't very good, and he was the only one in the entire R&D Department 9. As for why he was the only one, Liu stuttered for a long time before Ding Ming and the others finally understood. This Mr. Cuddle's temper was too bad, and he spoke too straightforwardly. He often offended many of his colleagues, until one time when a higher-up from the headquarters came to inspect. Mr. Cuddle actually scolded that higher-up and was sent here. Think about it. If Liu's comprehensive R&D Department 3 was already like this, what about the R&D Department 9? There wasn't even a single intelligent robot in this hall. Wasn't this too pitiful? That's right. Xiao AI suddenly said, This place seems to be messy, but in fact, there's a pattern to the placement of these items. The curve calculation mental cultivation method and disorderly leapfrog calculation mention this pattern. If I'm not wrong, this Mr. Cuddle should be a relatively powerful statistician. She came to this conclusion because this Mr. Cuddle was already 76 years old. For an origin ability statistician to be able to live to such an age, his attainment was definitely not low. Sure enough, 10 seconds later, an old man climbed down from a 4-story shelf. Instead of saying that he climbed, it was better to say that he rolled down. Looking at his posture, he seemed to be crawling and rolling in the air. 6 or 7 metal buckets fell to the ground with a dong 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 sound. The old man was lying in the middle of the pile of metal buckets, and one of them even hit his head with a dong sound. Liu was shocked and quickly ran over. Mr. Cuddle, are you okay? Chapter 266. What's the matter? What's the matter with me? The old man actually jumped up like a carp. At this moment, Meng Yin, Farais, and Mao Zi's eyes were fixed on him. Their style was quite elegant, but this old man's style was even more eye-catching. Mr. Cuddle's height was estimated to be less than 6 meters. Liu was actually a little taller than him. His head was as big as a bucket. The top of his head was bald, but there was a tuft of hair on each side of his forehead that reached his shoulders. This hairstyle made the four-eyed Russian feel inferior. Cartel's beard was thick and dense, but his pair of small, bright eyes were rolling around. Only this pair of eyes didn't make him look old. He was wearing the Starlight Group's staff uniform. This uniform was a bit like a full set of jeans. The most amazing thing was his shoes. This pair of shoes was very big and had a unique shape because it seemed to be made of metal. The left shoe looked like a European-style bathtub, while the right shoe looked like a high boot. Farais couldn't help but mutter, This person is a professor. How am I not? Cartel's ears were very sharp. He shouted at Four Eyes, Where did this wild brat come from? Listen, I am an analyst, a statistician, a battle armor master, a data specialist, a particle expert, a professor of energy, a crystal maker, a database professor. He couldn't stop talking. Liu coughed lightly and said, Mr. Cartel, this is Ding Ming. He is a level 3 VIP invited by our group. Cartel was stunned. So you're that Ding Ming? What an ugly suit. Farais was stunned. Suit? I'm wearing a F*King suit. Mousie rolled his eyes. Uncultured thing. That brand is called Anima. It is an old brand, cough cough. Liu coughed lightly again. Not this Mr. Sure, but him. Cartel turned his head to look at Ding Ming. He was even more stunned. He didn't expect Ding Ming to be so young. How could such a young person obtain the inverse source crystal? What's going on? Why are you only here now? Cartel suddenly opened his mouth and scolded him. I've been waiting for you for more than a month. Hurry up and open the container. Hurry. As he spoke, he turned around and walked towards the workbench. Ding Ming immediately nodded at Liu, meaning that he had completed his task and could leave. Meng Yin and the other two planned to leave as well. After all, the true VIP was Ding Ming, not them. Besides, Their mind were not here. This was the first time the three of them had entered the city. They had long since wanted to go out and experience this legendary city. Liu smiled politely and said, "Mr. Ting, please let me know if you need anything." Ding Ming nodded. Okay. The workbench wasn't a holographic simulation system similar to the main control console. Instead, it was the most ancient and primitive long alloy table. There were a bunch of large and small machines on it. This cartel didn't seem to trust artificial intelligence systems. As expected, the suitcase was stored here. Cartel quickly placed it on the workbench and said impatiently, "Hurry up." Although his attitude wasn't very friendly, it suited Ding Ming's taste. The reason was very simple. Ding Ming was a straight man and didn't like to be long-winded. Being direct and straightforward was the way to do things. After the liquid lock chip was inserted, the box-shaped lock immediately flashed and made a humming sound. A system voice immediately sounded from inside. "Please enter the password." Ding Ming said, "Hello, my name is Ding Ming." The system voice said, "Verifying the password. You have successfully unlocked the lock." With another humming sound, the liquid lock's light disappeared and it fell to the sides. Ding Ming was about to reach out his hand when Cartel suddenly stopped him. "What are you doing? Do you think you can open it like this?" Ding Ming was curious. "Can I?" "Of course not," Cartel said as he walked over to the control console. His fingers quickly swiped on the screen. Ding Ming was familiar with this action because he remembered that Xinjia used a similar hand gesture when operating the spacecraft's main control console. Following the command from the control console, the heavy door of R&D Department 9 slowly closed with a rumble. It was so tight that not even a crack could be seen. Cartel yelled, "You idiot! If you really open the container with your bare hands, the special curvature wave of the inverse source crystal will immediately spread out in all directions. In space, quantum radars will be able to find the location in just half an hour. Then, countless people will come to snatch it." Ding Ming was puzzled. "But this isn't space." "Retard and idiot," Cartel said disdainfully. "If I don't close the door, do you think the servers and detectors of other corporations won't be able to detect it? This is confidential, a trade secret. If Shenghao Corporation finds out about it, I'll be derelict in my duties. Do you understand?" He was indeed the kind of person who could not stop once he started talking. "Don't think that my workshop is broken and run down. Let me tell you, the material of this house is a combination of mechanical particles from the Frogman Nation and special fibers from the Starbao Corporation. As long as this door is completely closed, any kind of signal and wave will be blocked inside. The outside world will definitely not be able to detect it. Then Skynet won't be able to find it either?" This was obviously Little Rascal teaching Ding Ming this question. "Bah," Cartel snorted. "Skynet? How can it be called Skynet? Do you think you can call yourself Skynet just because you have a few space stations and a large scale? Which son of AB *TCH came up with this design? This old man stopped using it 30 years ago. It's so backward, so embarrassing. 'Tis TSK, this old man." Little Rascal was also helpless. "I really don't know if he's bragging or not." Xiao AI said, "I don't think so." Ding Ming asked, "Why not?" Xiao AI said, "He's not lying. Now that the door is closed, even my detection system can't see through it." Little Rascal hurriedly said, "Ding Ming, test your telekinetic vision." Ding Ming nodded slightly. He exerted a little force with his eyes, and a telekinetic wave spread out with a whoosh. What surprised him was not that his telekinetic vision could not see through the door. His telekinetic vision could still see through the 5-meter-thick wall, but the effect was greatly reduced. With Ding Ming's current brain development, his telekinetic vision could extend to a range of about 1,200 meters. This was the sensory range. He could observe 360 degrees without any blind spots within 800 meters. This was the effective range. He could clearly hear any decibel fluctuations within 550 meters. Within 300 meters, he could coordinate his telekinetic microdots with Little Rascal and the others' memory functions to perform all kinds of analysis. But now his sensory range could only extend to about 100 meters through the wall. The scenery outside was still the most primitive black and white. This situation had only appeared when he first awakened his vision in Black Gold Base. This old man looked arrogant and conceited, but he did have some skills. At this moment, Cartel had already put on a pair of tempered gloves. He used a pair of delicate tweezers to carefully remove the object from the container. Dingmeng had been curious about this inverse source crystal for a long time. Today, he finally got to see its true appearance. It was a long object that was about the size of a lighter. However, it looked more like a small piece of transparent crystal. Its surface flowed with a wave-like shimmer. From time to time, it would emit a circle of white light with a tinge of yellow. Although the light was shockingly bright, Dingmeng didn't find it too dazzling. This was because when the light swept over him, he actually felt his soul throb. Is this the inverse source crystal? Dingmeng carefully observed the crystal. At the same time, he focused his telekinetic vision on it. The same scene occurred in the mining area of Cyprus Old Planet. His telekinetic vision disappeared with a whoosh. This inverse source crystal looked like a crystal, but it was actually like an invisible black hole in the depths of the universe. It had a fatal attraction to the objects around it. No matter what kind of scan or fluctuation it was, it would be sucked in at once. But does the inverse source crystal have a curvature fluctuation? Why can't we sense it? Dingmeng was still puzzled. Little Rascal explained. I looked it up. There are two reasons. First, the inverse source crystal is not something that low-level origin ability users can sense. This is because the fluctuations of ordinary origin ability users are too weak. When you examine it, you're actually charging it with energy. There are too many different kinds of energy, fluctuations, and matter in the universe. The inverse source crystal is formed through a long period of absorption. Second, the detection of the inverse source crystal is also based on this principle. Although quantum radar is advanced, it uses a primitive method. It simply follows the frequency of the curvature fluctuation and then feeds back to the blind spots in the field of vision. Then, the system will automatically suspect that it is the inverse source crystal. There are too many blind spots in the field of vision of origin ability users, and they are all different types. Naturally, they won't be able to discover it. Of course, experts who have reached a terrifying level of cultivation will definitely be able to distinguish it. Dingmeng couldn't help but secretly sigh. In the end, it was still because he was too weak. Cartel was also observing the inverse source crystal. This inverse source crystal that was excavated 100 years ago is indeed different. It's much better than those man-made ones. Dingmeng curiously asked, "What's different?" Cartel glanced at him. Cyprus Planet is relatively close to us, but it was quite far away 100 years ago. It was still considered an undeveloped planet. At that time, the Starbow group excavated the inverse source crystal that was naturally formed in space. Whether it's the quality or the quantity, it's much better than the man-made ones now. Dingmeng pondered for a moment and said, "Mr. Cartel, how does the Starbow group plan to deal with this thing now?" Cartel was obviously stumped by this question. The inverse source crystal had too many uses. The first use was to store energy in the Kajia server. Next, it could be decomposed to be used in ships, reactors, battle armor, mechas, and other facilities. As for the cultivation of origin ability users, it would naturally be used in the Kajia server's virtual world. Cartel naturally knew that the upper echelons had reached an agreement with Dingmeng. Dingmeng himself had priority to use the inverse source crystal. Thus, he slowly asked, "Brat, how do you plan to use it? Tell me what you think." Chapter 267. Dingmeng didn't have any thoughts at all. His only question was Little Rascal Little Love. "Mr. Cartel, can the inverse source crystal be directly provided to origin ability users for cultivation?" Cartel's eyes widened. "You're a combat-type origin ability user?" Dingmeng said, "Yes." Cartel said, "How old are you this year?" Dingmeng said, 21 years old. Cartel asked again, "Which department are you from? What level are you at now?" "Thermodynamics." Dingmeng helplessly sighed. but I don't have citizenship, so I can't go through the certification process. Cartel said, then you're an origin ability user? No. Ding Ming decided to tell the truth. If I'm not wrong, I should be at the War Sovereign level. War Sovereign? Cartel's expression was as if he had seen a monster. Are you kidding me? Kid, you probably haven't figured out the Superpower Center standards for Origin Ability User Certification, right? Ding Ming sighed. I know this is a bit exaggerated, but it's the truth. Seeing his serious expression, Cartel was silent for a while before saying, Kid, you're actually very honest. You didn't lie. According to my calculations, the probability of you being a war sovereign is as high as 3%. Ding Ming rolled his eyes. 3% is considered high? What do you know? Cartel was dissatisfied. This is called Murphy's Law. The lower the probability, the higher the possibility. I just said that I'm a statistician. Do you think I've been a statistician for the past 50 years for nothing? Ding Ming said, then can this inverse source crystal be used directly? Cartel's eyes rolled. If that's the case, then you should prove to me whether you have the strength of a war sovereign or not. Ding Ming hesitated. This place isn't convenient for me to demonstrate, right? Cartel was dissatisfied again. What's not convenient about it? Just show me a few moves, and I'll be able to calculate the rough numbers. Ding Ming thought for a while and said, okay. Then he took off the shiny gold backpack and unzipped it. As soon as he opened it, the ancient sword in his backpack flew out of its scabbard with a clang. It flew into the air and spun in circles. It was as if an invisible hand was holding it and pulling it, slowly performing sword moves one after another. About 15 seconds later, the long sword flew back to Ding Ming's waist and returned to its scabbard. Ding Ming looked up. What do you think? Mr. Coddle, Mr. Coddle? Cartel seemed to be stunned on the spot. After a long while, he finally revealed a shocked expression. You brat, you actually managed to cultivate an applied spirit power. I'm afraid you're not even a beginner war elder, right? Damn, you're still so young, and you're even a refugee. As a citizen of the Federation and an expert in energy research, he naturally knew what this age meant. Not to mention far away, just on Blue Moon Planet, there were less than 10 young geniuses like Ding Ming. Cartel obviously knew that he couldn't casually ask about the secret manuals of origin ability users. Since Ding Ming dared to mention it, it proved that he had cultivated some special secret technique. He had this confidence. Thus, he waved his hand and said, "Follow me." He walked towards a corner at the edge of the hall. A square-shaped induction cabin that looked like a refrigerator was embedded in the wall. This induction cabin's exterior was brown with a hint of black. It looked old and worn out. Ding Ming couldn't help but frown. Seeing Ding Ming's expression, Cartel knew what he was thinking. He took the initiative to say, "Don't think that this thing is worn out. Let me tell you, this induction cabin was modified by me. It's better than any product on the market." As he spoke, he opened the cabin's fan and went to tinker with it. Ding Ming noticed that the old man had actually embedded the inverse source crystal into a crystal bottle at the top of the induction cabin. Then, he twisted a few parts that Ding Ming couldn't understand before turning around and saying, "Let me say this first. If you feel uncomfortable, immediately notify me. I can increase or decrease the quantity of the inverse source crystal through the control panel." Ding Ming was about to go in when Cartel stretched out his hand and said, "Wait, you can't come here and take advantage of me for free, right? Let me take a look at your ancient sword." Seeing that Ding Ming was hesitating, Cartel was dissatisfied. He glared at him and said, "I'm letting you do the research because I think highly of you. I don't even bother with people begging me. It's all because you're so young. If it were someone else, would you let them try?" "All right." Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh. This old man was quite cute. When the sword was in Cartel's hands, it was as if he was possessed. He couldn't take his eyes off the sword. Furthermore, he was muttering to himself, "Not bad, not bad, not bad. This refinement is quite exquisite. It's actually made by hand. He's an expert." Suddenly, he flew into a rage. Which bastard is messing around with this? Using Krypton gold to add to it like this? Bastard. He had a pained expression on his face. Ding Meng asked curiously, "Mr. Cartel, is there a problem with this sword?" Cartel turned his head and said seriously, "Kid, it's a good thing that your sword met me." Ding Meng asked why. Cartel said, "How about I remodel this sword?" "Oh." Ding Meng stared at him. "You can remodel it?" Cartel snorted coldly and said, "Are you doubting me?" Ding Meng hurriedly waved his hands. "That's not what I meant. I'm just curious. How can you remodel a sword made of krypton gold?" "Nonsense." Cartel was quite angry. "Do you really think I'm useless? Let me tell you, don't look at how broken my department is." The Star Rainbow Corporation's internal Kajia server is connected to my department. The Kajia server that you'll be using for your cultivation is also connected to the Kajia server's internal network. Do you think that I can't do anything about this Krypton gold just because it has a high melting point? The bastard who made this sword is quite skilled, but the materials used are just a pig skull. Get to me to remodel. I guarantee that your martial arts will reach a higher level. You'll definitely be cultivating for a long time, so I can study it. Little Rascal said, "No wonder, Ding Meng. Ever since you came in, we've been reading all kinds of data from the Star Rainbow Corporation, but we couldn't get into their core database. It turns out that the Kajia server is blocking us. We can't get in with our authority." Ding Meng said, "How can we get in?" Little Rascal said, "Same old method. Continue cultivating. Once you become stronger, our authority will be unlocked, and we can forcefully enter. Why don't you ask this old man for the password to the defense array?" Ding Meng's eyelids drooped, and he didn't reply. Don't expect an outsider like him to know the password. It was probably a top secret within the Star Rainbow Corporation, and the password's difficulty was probably beyond imagination. Right now, it was best to hurry up and cultivate. Completing the Diamond Astral technique as soon as possible was the way to go. As the blades of the Kajia server closed, Ding Meng finally realized just how powerful the Star Rainbow Corporation was. The control interface provided by the AI was enough to dazzle his eyes. 1. Amplification categories 2. Nutrition categories 3. Cultivation categories 4. Martial arts categories 4. 5. Origin energy detection 6. Auxiliary functions 7. Data statistics 8. Question consultation 9. Online communication 10. Classification rankings 11. Star Rainbow Special Area 12. Kajia server. There were as many as 28 choices in the categories alone, but most of them couldn't be entered because Ding Meng wasn't a member of the Star Rainbow Corporation. As such, he pressed the Amplification Categories button, and the interface changed with a whoosh. A large number of words appeared in front of his eyes. Star Rainbow General Agent, 100 contribution points. Star Rainbow Source Enhancement Fluid, 150 contribution points. Star Rainbow Number 1 Flame Energy, 120 contribution points. Star Rainbow Number 2 Flame Energy, 200 contribution points. Star Rainbow General Solidifying Mixture A, 500 contribution points. Star Rainbow General Solidifying Mixture B, 600 contribution points. Star Rainbow General Solidifying Mixture C, 700 contribution points. After counting, there were actually more than 300 types of amplification equipment. Compared to the induction cabin that he had used in the Christine Academy, it was completely incomparable. Just as Cartel had said, even though this place was broken and tattered, it had the support of a praiseworthy server. Cartel's voice then sounded in Ding Meng's ears. "Kid, what amplification products are you choosing? With the inverse source crystal, those things are all trash." Ding Meng thought about it and agreed with Cartel's logic. Cartel continued, "Get ready. I'll give you a hint. This time, I'll weaken the energy release of the inverse source crystal to 1/10,000th. If you can't take it, just let me know." "Okay," Ding Meng replied and quickly entered a meditative state. In the past, when Ding Meng absorbed origin energy, he felt as if he was in a vast and boundless starry sky. The stars in the Milky Way were pulsating origin energy, and the bright spots of origin energy he absorbed were essence. However, this time, In addition to these, Ding Ming suddenly felt a vortex-shaped black hole appear above his head. It exuded a mysterious, attractive force. As soon as his telekinesis touched it, he would be immediately sucked in. This was clearly the inverse source crystal. However, with the Kejia server support, the black hole continued to expand and the vortex gradually changed color. Suddenly, it turned into a huge, colorful star vortex and sucked Ding Ming's entire body into it. Ding Ming finally saw the inverse source crystal's true appearance, which he could not see with his telekinesis vision. The interior of the crystal was a world of light. Colorful lights illuminated the entire world, just like the sun in space. It was emitting extremely bright light in all directions. These light rays were faintly solid. They looked like light, but they were not light. They looked like water, but they were not water. It was very strange. When one was inside, it was as if they had entered a gorgeous magical world. Ding Ming opened his eyes wide in curiosity. Is this the real inverse source crystal? Cartel's voice sounded in his ears again. Kid, when this inverse source crystal was formed, it was influenced by the green energy. It should have more magical uses. Think about it yourself. How much you can absorb will depend on your luck. Chapter 268. After hearing Cartel's explanation, Ding Ming relaxed his limbs and began to slowly absorb origin energy. Ever since he had constructed the 6th and 7th origin, his ability to absorb origin energy had increased by leaps and bounds. But now a new situation had occurred. As soon as he began to absorb the origin energy, he felt as if all the light around him had turned into water. The water was pouring into his body through every pore, and it wasn't in the form of light spots, but actual water. The density of origin energy contained within it shocked Ding Ming. Because of the large amount of origin energy pouring into his body, the 7 origin points of the Diamond Star technique were automatically activated. They began to spin madly, creating even purer origin energy that quickly fused with the cells in his body. The lines between the origin points were also activated, and the image of the crown in his heart was very clear. It was no longer flickering in and out of existence like before. Xiao AI said, "Hurry up and activate the Diamond Star fusion art. The current absorption rate is 20,000 units of origin energy per second." What? Ding Ming was shocked. Back when he was refining the silver core stones in Feiyun City, he had risked his life to absorb 2,000 units of origin energy per second. Now, the absorption rate had increased tenfold. Who could withstand this? Little Rascal explained, "Don't worry, Ding Ming. The inverse source crystal is different from the silver core stones. Even though so much origin energy is pouring into your body, it won't expand." Ding Ming used his telekinesis to scan his entire body. He found that this was indeed the case. These droplets were mainly circulating in his blood. It was obvious that they were completely different from blood molecules. They were like the particles in his blood vessels, growing denser and denser as they accumulated. The miraculous thing was that he didn't feel any discomfort. Xiao AI's voice suddenly turned cold. That's right. Even though these particles are temporarily harmless to you, once they accumulate to a certain amount, they will undergo a qualitative change. According to Roger's law, when two objects come into contact with each other, they will transfer to each other. Even if they take something with them, they will leave something behind. The inverse source crystal's energy is too great. If you don't digest it in time, it will assimilate you sooner or later. Ding Ming was shocked. You're saying that if I don't consume this origin energy in time, I will become a part of the inverse source crystal? Xiao AI replied indifferently. That's how the inverse source crystal is formed. This time, Ding Ming did not dare to be careless. He quickly operated the crown and the smelting core points within it and began to smelt origin energy with all his might. It was only now that he truly understood how powerful the inverse source crystal was. As soon as the origin energy reached his heart, not to mention the fact that the origin point spun at double speed, the various large mirrors could be produced in 0.1 seconds. Then, With a ding-ling-ling sound, they would shatter like fireworks, spreading all kinds of pure energy throughout his body without any side effects. This sort of feeling was like being immersed in a mountain of treasures. The surroundings were inexhaustible gold, silver, and silk, and inexhaustible treasures of the heavens and the earth, causing the speed of cultivation to increase by more than 10 times. Ding Meng suddenly understood Cartel's doubts. It was not impossible to directly use this thing to cultivate, but if you were an ordinary origin energy user or did not cultivate any secret techniques, you would not be able to withstand such a large amount of origin energy. It was like you had picked up some money, but there was too much money. If a few hundred tons of money fell from the sky, you would be crushed to death. It had to be known that the amount of inverse source crystal that was being released was only 1/10,000th of a normal amount, and it was already so terrifying. It was no wonder that the large organizations were racking their brains and fighting desperately for this thing. The inverse source crystal was not something that could be bought with money. If Ding Meng had experienced this before, he would not have agreed even if Su Mengqing had offered him a price of trillions of star coins. While the 7 origin points were rapidly absorbing the origin energy, the star fusion art also began to slowly refine the new origin energy. This time, the strange thing was that within the space of the crown, the poisonous purple origin energy that had been refined on planet V4 was slowly disappearing and being replaced by this new origin energy of different colors. Little Rascal suddenly cheered. This is the green origin energy that the old man was talking about. It is a fusion of the characteristics of all life forms in the universe. After absorbing it, it will remove all harmful substances from the body and transform it into an origin energy with abundant vitality. Let me give you a simple example. Even more powerful poisons cannot harm you right now. Furthermore, if you're injured in the future, you can use this origin energy to quickly heal yourself. Ding Meng was overjoyed. Without saying anything else, he put in all his effort. Xiao AI silently monitored the various changes within his body. After the refined origin energy was formed, it turned fiery red. After the second refinement, it became red and blue. After the third refinement, it became red, yellow, and blue. After the third refinement, it became red, yellow, and blue. It was only when the origin energy had truly become a dazzling origin energy that she quietly said, "Enter the intermediate consciousness space. Prepare to enter the 8th origin point." Ding Meng was truly shocked. He had always thought that the Diamond Star technique was a 7-star origin energy art, and he had been satisfied with that. However, this was not the end. This origin energy art was actually a terrifying 8-star origin energy art. Chu Shaoqing had once told him that the strongest origin energy art in the Norse Empire was a 9-star origin energy art. Although the Empire's standard was a 10-star origin energy art, no one knew what a 10-star origin energy art was like. Now, the Diamond Star technique was only 1 star lower than the strongest king energy art. This proved that Little Rascal was not lying. From the very beginning, the K-Virus had been aimed at becoming the strongest king energy art. Ding Meng's direction of cultivation was to become the strongest king energy art. Ding Meng suddenly fell silent. His tone was a bit serious. "How many stars is our origin energy art?" Little Rascal sighed. "We don't have enough authority, but based on my judgment, it won't be lower than a 9-star origin energy art." Xiao AI also agreed. "If I'm not mistaken, it should be a 10-star origin energy art. Otherwise, how can an 8-star origin energy art be considered the strongest king energy art?" Ding Meng was speechless. He suddenly had an irrepressible anticipation for the future. At the same time, he also felt an indescribable fear. He really couldn't imagine what kind of heights a 10-star origin energy art would reach. Would reaching such heights be a blessing or a curse? Little Rascal said, "Don't worry. Our current shielding function is already very strong. The outside world can't sense this place, and we've also blocked the Kiki server from reading your body's data. Don't worry and cultivate." Ding Meng nodded. Since he had already reached this step, there was no turning back. Where there was joy, there was pain. Where there was happiness, there was also pain. Where there was happiness, there was also disaster. Only by taking one step at a time would one be able to see a new dawn, Xiao AI said. Act 5570. Before you enter, let me remind you that the 8th origin has no content inside. It's blank. Blank origin? Ding Ming was stunned. The origin has nothing inside? What's going on? How am I supposed to construct it? Xiao AI's tone was also very serious. Because its internal structure needs to be constructed by you. Ding Ming was a bit confused. Little Rascal explained. Ding Ming, the 8th origin won't appear in your heart. Instead, it will be constructed in your brain. It will be formed according to your memories. Its quality and function will also be determined by your own actions. This, Ding Ming still couldn't imagine it. Xiao AI said, forget it. Let's hurry up and proceed. On the beach, in the middle-level consciousness space, the Phantom wasn't practicing martial arts on the beach this time. When Ding Ming's mind entered, Ding Ming saw the Phantom slowly walking over. It politely gestured for him to enter. Then the Phantom slowly disappeared. Along with it, the beach and the sea also disappeared. The entire world returned to the suffocating darkness. Ding Ming suddenly felt his body become light as a feather. If there was such a thing as an out-of-body experience, then this was his current state. Suddenly, the entire world lit up with a whoosh. The scenery around him became exceptionally clear. Ding Ming focused his eyes and couldn't help but be shocked. This place was actually the experimental hall of the Black Gold Base's underground worship. At this moment, the hall was burning with raging flames. Corpses and steel scraps were everywhere. Suddenly, he felt a heart-wrenching pain in his chest. He couldn't help but bend down. However, from the corner of his eyes, he could clearly see that the person standing in front of him was actually Sadler. Sadler's whip was releasing energy chains that were like electric currents, firmly locking him in place. This scene was shockingly the life and death battle between him and Sadler. Ding Ming raised his head again. Not far behind Sadler, Little Four really was still alive. Little Four held the air blast gun with both hands and shot Sadler without hesitation. As expected, Sadler was sent flying, crashing into the large screen in the center of the room. At this moment, many past events flashed before his eyes like a movie. Ding Ming couldn't care less about the intense pain in his ribs. He waved his hands and anxiously shouted, Little Four, run, run. Little Four obviously also sensed the arrival of a large group of mercenaries in the main passageway. Similarly, he clutched his chest and ran with great difficulty towards the opposite passageway. At this moment, Sadler fell heavily to the ground. Ding Ming also turned around and pounced at Sadler. His claw blade was still stuck in Sadler's shoulder armor. This was how he had killed this elite mercenary back then. Unfortunately, this wasn't his first choice back then, so he missed the best opportunity. As he pounced, Sadler's flying whip lashed out again. This time, the energy chains were still charging and hadn't been released. However, the whip wrapped tightly around Ding Ming's neck and pulled him over in an instant. Go to hell. Sadler's eyes shone with a fierce light as he raised his iron fist again. With a muffled bang, the fist once again hit the place where he was previously injured. Ding Ming's internal organs were already shattered, but he still used the last of his strength to grab onto the claw blade and then pulled it down with all his might. Ding Ming's shoulder armor was immediately pulled out with a strong electric spark. Sadler's expression was also distorted. However, Ding Ming no longer had the strength to deliver that final fatal blow to his neck. He also slowly went limp, curling up beside a control panel. Chapter 269. As the mercenaries swarmed in, the general's frantic roar rang through the armored communicator. Kill them all! Kill them all! Kill them all! Leave no one alive! Even Ding Ming could hear his voice, but he no longer had the strength to stand up. More than 20 power armor's photoelectric guns and energy cannons fired at the same time. The net formed by the energy bullets and the cloud formed by the white cannonballs rolled in their direction. Countless steel plates were lifted, and many control panels were blown to pieces. The entire hall was filled with sand and stones, and the ground shook. In the midst of the explosion, Little Four, who had already walked far away, staggered back. He was still shouting anxiously, "Brother Ding, Brother Ding." Obviously, he did not want to leave Ding Ming behind. They had agreed to go out together, so he could not leave anyone behind. "Brother Ding, hang in there. I'll carry you." Little Four picked up Ding Ming and carried him on his back. He was already thin and weak, and he was also seriously injured. Now that he was carrying Ding Ming on his back, he looked like a crippled mouse carrying a steel plate through a rain of bullets. However, his eyes were firm, and there was no trace of fear on his face. With this kind of speed, they definitely wouldn't be able to run far. Behind Little Four, the attacks of the mercenaries formed a huge white light. The light slowly approached, and very quickly, the two of them were absorbed into it. In the blink of an eye, they were turned into ashes with a swoosh. The experiment hall disappeared, and the whole world returned to darkness. The soul-stirring scene seemed to be still in front of him. He did not expect that the choice would be that both of them would die in the black gold base. For some reason, Ding Ming's eyes were slightly moist. Little Four's lively figure was still there 1 second, and the next moment, it was gone. "Little Bad, Little Love," Ding Ming called softly. There was no sound, and no one answered him. The round face and the computer on his retina did not move. With another swoosh, the illusion appeared again. This time, Ding Ming opened his eyes wide and observed carefully. He discovered that he was inside a spaceship, and in front of him was a control panel. A galactic map was raised above it, and the person standing next to the map was actually Meng Yan. Meng Yan stretched out her hand to enlarge the map, and 2 green interstellar routes appeared on the map. Meng Yan explained, "If we fly in the direction of Nebula KV-3545, we will be able to contact the Green Arrow Corps base. If Mr. Ting asks for help, it should not be a problem. After all, you and Misty were invited by the Green Arrow Corps. This is..." Ding Ming immediately reacted. This was the Battle of Flying Star City. After they were intercepted by Yu at the outskirts of the Zoisha faculty, they escaped from the carrier in the Blazing Shark spaceship. Now, there were 2 escape routes in front of them. One was to fly in the direction of Nebula KV-3545 and ask for help from the Green Arrow Corps on the way. The other was to fly in the opposite direction to the E faculty's large nebula, Pandora Virus 4. That was Meng Yan's nest, and their choice was to go to planet V4. As expected, Meng Yan was already speaking. "Yes, planet V4 is a poisonous planet. Our spaceship can land there, but Yin Fengwei and the others can't get there." "Wait." Ding Ming raised his hand to stop Meng Yan. He suddenly remembered that if he went to planet V4, he would detoxify Xu Yin and the others. Then he would cultivate in the poisonous forest until the Four-Eyed Man and the others drove the carrier to take him back to planet KV-303. It took almost half a year. However, on the way back, 4 days before they arrived at planet KV-303, the Green Arrow base was massacred by the extreme pirates. Xiao Shanzi was unfortunately killed in that disaster. More than 40,000 innocent refugees were also killed. A Xiao escaped the disaster, but she went crazy when he thought of Xiao Shanzi. Ding Ming's heart could not calm down. He suddenly realized that he could make a choice here. He could go to planet V4 to save Shuyin and the others later, but the crisis on planet KV-303 could not be delayed. At this moment, Ding Ming turned his head and decisively gave an order. "No, we're not going to planet V4. We're flying in the direction of Nebula KV-3545. I'll contact the captain and the others." Meng Yan's expression immediately became a little stunned. "With our current speed, we'll need at least 40 hours. However, if Yin Fengwei insists on chasing us to the end, he'll be able to catch up to us within 36 hours at the slowest." Ding Ming took a deep breath. "Don't worry, I'm confident. I'll definitely be able to contact the Green Arrow support." He said that he was confident, but in reality, he did not have any confidence at all. He was too anxious. His only thought at this moment was to return to planet KV-303 regardless of everything and join the battle with Captain Yu Liang and the others. He wanted to kill Hu Biao and his group of heartless bastards. However, While he was thinking, a red light suddenly flashed wildly in the control hall. The alarm sounded, and the system's voice quickly sounded. Warning, warning, a large amount of dangerous energy has been detected and has locked onto the ship. All personnel, prepare to be hit. He looked down at the map. Dense red dots had appeared behind the blazing shark spaceship. There were so many of them that it was like a net. Ding Meng was about to say something when the control hall suddenly trembled violently. It was obvious that the blazing shark spaceship had been attacked by the Sky Wolf Corps. The tremors were so strong that even people could not stand still. The system's voice sounded. Warning, warning, the ship's hull is currently damaged at 95%. Dai's expression was clearly panicked. Cousin Ding Meng, they've caught up. What should we do? Ding Meng said, don't panic. As soon as the word panic came out of his mouth, the spaceship seemed to have been hit by even more intense firepower. The entire control hall flipped with a boom. Everyone was knocked to the side. Four-Eyed and the Russian were both thrown to the ceiling. The system's voice sounded. Warning, warning, the ship's hull is currently damaged at 22%. Meng Yan's blazing shark spaceship's defense was too weak. It could not withstand the attack of over 100 spaceships. Soon, the surrounding walls began to crackle with electric sparks. The screens on the control panel were extinguished one after another. A raging fire ignited in the passage. The spaceship would probably disintegrate in less than a minute. Dai's head had been smashed by a sharp object. Her hair was disheveled and her face was covered in blood. She crawled over and held Ding Meng's hand tightly. She seemed to be crying. Ding Meng, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I don't want to die here, Ding Meng hurriedly said. Miss Dai, don't be afraid. We'll be fine. We'll leave together. It was impossible for him to complete his sentence. With a rumbling sound, the steel plates on the ceiling fell off one after another. This time, even the holographic screen of the main control console disappeared. Dense electric sparks began to appear all over the ship. This was definitely the precursor to a huge explosion. Even the system's voice was intermittent and indistinct. Warning, ship damaged. 5%. All hands clang. A huge and bright white pupil appeared in the hall again. Meng Yan was sucked in while screaming. The Marshal, Four-Eyed, and Harry struggled as they were sucked in. The four of them did not even turn into ashes. As soon as they were sucked in, they turned into nothingness. Cousin Ding Meng, Dai, he shouted. She was also sucked in. She desperately held on to Ding Meng's hand. Hold on tight. Ding Meng also used all his strength to hold on to her. Unfortunately, it was useless. The absorption force of the pupil was too strong. It was not something a human could resist. 5 seconds later, Dai let out an extremely shrill scream before she was also sucked in by the pupil. Seeing the pupil expand and expand, and in the blink of an eye, it was right in front of him. Ding Meng also knew that it was useless to struggle. He simply sat up and waited for his death. With a whoosh, the control hall disappeared, and he returned to the intermediate consciousness space. It was still dark, and there was still no sound. Little Rascal and Little Love seemed to have entered hibernation mode because of his cultivation. Ding Meng took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. In the space of consciousness, he had personally experienced the two things that had just happened, and they were the most vulnerable part of his heart. Because of the choices he had made back then, Little Four had died, Xiao Shanzi had died, and tens of thousands of refugees had died. Among all the things that he had experienced, these two things were not the biggest, but they had the biggest impact on his emotions. Because along the way, these people were the most unforgettable things to him. Especially Little Shanzi's death. It was the one he could not accept the most. In his childhood, he rarely had a carefree companion like Little Shanzi. He also did not have a lively memory like Little Shanzi. That was why the extreme bandits had made him so angry. Was the construction of the 8th point to allow him to go back to the past and change those events again? Often, the changes in the direction of major events were caused by those inadvertent choices. This time, the image of a person appeared in Ding Meng's mind. He was sunny, upright, and full of enthusiasm. No matter who he was facing, he always had a bright smile on his face. It was like a spring breeze that swept across the earth, making people feel at ease and warm. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, the darkness around him suddenly changed. Like the ink on a piece of paper slowly fading away, the picture slowly unfolded, revealing a vivid scene. A clear green river spread out in the suburbs, but it did not make people feel warm. That was because there was white snow on the mountaintop in the distance. The world was shrouded in cold fog. In the milky white fog, a poor young man was carrying a bundle of firewood into the courtyard in front of the wooden house. His clothes were too thin, and in such a cold weather, his face was extremely pale from the cold. He rubbed his hands, put them to his mouth, and blew a few white breaths. Only then did he attach the black scythe to his waist. However, there was still a smile on his face. He seemed to be very satisfied with everything in front of him, and was not afraid of the hardships in life at all. This time, Ding Meng's eyes were completely wet. Seeing a living person again, he could not help it. He quickly walked up to him, and his voice was choked with sobs. Brother Zheng Ming. Chapter 270. Upon seeing Ding Meng, the smile on Zheng Ming's face became even wider. Ding Meng, are you ready? Ding Meng nodded with a complicated expression. Zheng Ming patted his frail shoulder in a friendly manner and smiled. I'll have to trouble you to carry this bundle of firewood to Uncle Yuan Liang's house. In order to save Miss Qiao this morning, Uncle Yuan Liang dropped the bundle of firewood into the river. I went to help him chop another bundle of firewood. Miss Qiao was the peasant girl who went to the Tian family compound with Zheng Ming. This was the day before his big brother left. At night, his big brother and Aunt Qiao would appear at Tian Qing's birthday banquet. All of Ding Meng's parting feelings suddenly turned into endless nervousness because his big brother's departure would be an eternal farewell. His big brother would be walking a path of no return. Even though he knew that this was an illusion created by the K-virus, Ding Meng was still moved because this was the softest part of his heart. Even when he was at his happiest, he did not want to touch these memories. While he was still in a daze, Zheng Ming reached out to him and said, Ding Meng, give me the hero's knife that big sister Wenhe gave us. Although Zheng Ming lived an ideal life, he was not a foolish person. He also had a faint premonition that the Tian family compound was not a place where a country bumpkin like him could enter. If the situation went wrong, the T-shaped claw knife could be used to defend himself. This precious knife was like a god in the hearts of Zheng Ming and Ding Meng. It was like a protective talisman. No matter what you wanted to do, as long as you carried it, you would definitely succeed. When Ding Meng took out this knife, he had the same thought. This knife could even defeat an expert like Yu Xingyang, let alone others. But now, Ding Meng knew that once Zheng Ming obtained the saber, he would take Miss Qiao away from the wooden house and rush to Tian Qing's private manor. The Tian family's courtyard was not too far from here. It would only take a day to reach there. He only had a day left. Perhaps it was not a day, but a thought. Ding Meng suddenly raised his head and said, Big brother, can you not go this time? The smile on Zheng Ming's face disappeared. Ding Meng, what are you talking about? Ding Meng looked embarrassed. Big brother, I'm worried about your safety. I'm afraid that something might happen to you. Zheng Ming smiled again. What's there to worry about? What accident could happen to me? Ding Meng hesitated and said, Big brother, the Tian family is the royal family, and General Tian is the most powerful general in our kingdom. Even the monarch has to respect him. The one who did the wrong thing is his son. Can you guarantee that he won't be biased? Zheng Ming said proudly, I dare to go because I believe in General Tian's strict military discipline. If it were someone else, I wouldn't necessarily go. Ding Meng was a little anxious. He knew Zheng Ming's personality very well, so he changed his tone and said, Big brother, I still think that it's better if you don't go so rashly. We can slowly think of a way to deal with this matter. I heard that today is Great General Tian's 100th birthday. The Tian family must have invited all sorts of heroes and nobles. If you go like this and the news spreads, great General Tion's face will be swept to the ground. In their eyes, you are undoubtedly causing trouble. What if General Tion doesn't do anything to you? What about his friends? What about his colleagues? Can you guarantee that they won't do anything to you? As expected, Zheng Ming was surprised. 100th birthday? Is that true? Ding Ming had an idea and said, "It's true. I just saw a lot of ceremonial carriages on the road over there. They were all coming out of the city to celebrate the birthday of the Tian family." Zheng Ming finally fell silent. However, this silence did not last long. He slowly said, "Ding Ming." Ding Ming looked up. "Big brother," Zheng Ming said meaningfully, "when I handed this hero's knife to you, do you still remember what you promised me?" Ding Ming immediately puffed out his chest. "Of course I remember. Use this knife well. We must leave it for those who really need it. We must preserve it well, use it well, love it, and fight hard for the people we protect. We must never back down." These words were no longer as simple as words. They were the promises and vows of generations. None of the successors of each generation had ever forgotten them. They would never forget them. Zheng Ming nodded and continued, "When Big Sister won, he handed it to me. I also made the same promise. The reason why I made the promise was not just because of this knife, but because when Big Sister won, he saved us. What she faced was more difficult, more dangerous, and more terrifying than what I am about to face." Ding Ming did not want to speak, so he could only say, "Yes. But this time is different." Zheng Ming mercilessly interrupted him. "Ding Ming, look at the hunters around you. Although they saved Miss Xiao, when they found out that the perpetrators were the Sky Wings, they avoided her like she was the plague, not even willing to come close to this courtyard. She has no parents, no friends, and is so poor that she doesn't even have a complete set of clothes. After she was humiliated, she couldn't even speak. She doesn't even have the ability to cry out for justice. Which high official, noble, or hero would be willing to offend the most powerful general in the kingdom for such a deaf-mute woman?" Ding Ming was silent. Although he and Zheng Ming were two different types of people, when he heard these words coming from Zheng Ming's mouth, his heart was like a turbulent sea, unable to calm down at all. He even felt a lump in his throat, an impulse to cry. Zheng Ming put a hand on his shoulder. "Ding Ming, when Big Sister Wen has saved us, if she also had so many apprehensions and worries, as well as so many doubts and fears, would us brothers still be standing here today?" Ding Ming could not say anything at all. His throat was choked by an indescribable emotion. But even if he choked, he had to speak. This was a critical moment, because he knew the consequences. "Big brother, have you thought about this? If the consequences of you going this time are too severe, you might very well die." Zheng Ming looked around and said, "I can choose not to go. I can also hide like the other farmers around here. But if we live like this, what difference is there between us and the dead? Although I'm also poor, that's not a reason for my indifference. If I sit here indifferently today and let people like the Skywings run amok, have you ever thought that when the same disaster befalls me one day in the future, if the same as hide on the side and turn a blind eye, how would you feel?" Ding Ming shook his head. "But big brother," Zheng Ming turned around, his face filled with pride and determination. "From the first day I received this hero's knife from Big Sister, I shouldered this mission. I've long since given up on life and death. Even if one of me dies, there are still thousands of me who will stand up and receive this knife." His tone suddenly became emotional. "Death is not something to be afraid of. From the moment a person is born to the moment he dies, that is his destiny. He has walked the path he should have walked and completed the mission he should have completed. This is something he must experience in his life, so..." He turned around again and gripped Ding Ming's hand tightly. "Ding Ming, my good brother, if I meet with misfortune this time, please take back this knife and take good care of it. Let the hero's knife be passed down from generation to generation. Every big brother of our generation has not let down the trust of their predecessors." With that, he took the claw knife from Ding Ming's hand and strode toward the wooden hut. At this moment, Ding Ming suddenly felt a familiar feeling in his chest. The pressure of a mountain pressing down on him appeared once again. It was as if the origin ability in his body was somewhat sluggish, and he could no longer keep up with the development of this event. Even the surrounding scenery was changing, becoming distorted and rotating stripes. With a whoosh, he finally retreated from the intermediate consciousness space and returned to the dark and cold beach of the wooden hut. The figure was crouched on the ground, looking at the rising and falling tide thoughtfully. The waves seemed to be its mood. He retracted his telekinesis and entered a meditative state, retreating to the elementary consciousness space. However, Ding Meng still could not speak at this time. He was still immersed in his memories. The past was too deep, causing his emotions to become complicated. Little Rascal finally spoke. Ding Meng, don't be too sad. Ding Meng shook his head helplessly. Why would I suddenly think of these things? Xiao AI said, because the eighth origin is located at the center of your brain. When you construct it, it also absorbs your memories and creates the most unforgettable illusions in your memories. This origin is a test of your temperament. If you don't have a strong enough will, you won't be able to control it. Ding Meng said, I just saw Little Four, Little Shanzi, and Big Brother Zhengming, but they're all dead. Little Rascal said, that's because they occupy your most important long-term memory, so the origin is automatically extracted. Moreover, no matter what choice you make, the final result will not change. If you choose to save Little Four, the result will be that all of you will die in the experiment hall. If you choose to fly the Blazing Shark spaceship to planet KV-303, everyone on the spaceship will be buried in space. If you succeed in stopping Big Brother Zhengming, then Miss Qiao will commit suicide, and Big Brother Zhengming will feel ashamed and live in self-blame all day long. Ding Meng said, Is there no other way to change it? Little Rascal shook his head. The current result is the best result. Forcefully changing it will only make the situation worse. Ding Meng said hesitantly, Then did I fail to construct the eighth origin? Xiao AI said, It definitely didn't fail, but it didn't succeed either. Ding Meng said, Why? Xiao AI's voice turned cold. My understanding is that, among the three illusions, you made a mistake in choosing the important events. I don't think that was the most reasonable choice. Ding Meng could not help but ask, Then what should I choose? Chapter 271. Xiao AI said, We can hypothesize one by one. In the first illusion, you don't have to remind Little Four and quickly kill Sadler. After the passage is blown up and sealed, you don't have to worry about Little Four. Continue forward and find the other crashed Falcon spaceship as soon as possible to escape from the dead Silent Star. Ding Meng said, What about the second illusion? Xiao AI said in a deep voice, The Blazing Shark spaceship's flight path will definitely choose Planet V4. After landing, don't worry about Shuyin and the others. Seize the time to cultivate and refine the poison energy. Try to return to the Green Arrow base as soon as possible. Ding Meng fell silent. Xiao AI said, For the third illusion, you don't have to persuade Zhengming at all. You should let him take Miss Qiao on the road as soon as possible. Ding Meng couldn't help but ask, Are these the best choices? Xiao AI said, In my calculations, these are the best choices. Ding Meng asked why. Xiao AI said, It's very simple, because you saved a lot of time, sped up the pace of things, and pushed the matter forward. If this was reality, you wouldn't be at this place right now, and your strength wouldn't be at this level. If this was an illusion, the refinement of the essence has already created many illusion fragments. If these fragments can be combined into one and finally take shape, then the origin has been successfully constructed. Ding Meng fell silent again. After all, Little Rascal knew him best. Little Rascal sighed and said, Xiao AI, I admit that your starting point and principles are to serve the final form of the K-virus, but the choices you mentioned, Ding Meng, he really can't do it. He can't do it because he's not that kind of person. I understand. Xiao AI took the initiative to explain. It's because he has always followed his inner feelings and moral principles when making choices. In other words, value rationality and not instrumental rationality. In the judgment of instrumental rationality, the eighth origin's degree of construction is not full, which means that the construction has not been completed. Ding Meng suddenly said, "Do we have to abandon those people if we want to complete the construction in one go? Do we have to prioritize our own interests in everything and turn a blind eye to everything else?" "Yes." Xiao Ai's voice was very mechanical. Ding Meng sneered. "Let those massacres, bullies, and ugliness do whatever they want?" "Yes." Xiao Ai's voice didn't change. Ding Meng suddenly grew agitated. "Family, friends, friendships, feelings, all the values and rationality are to be abandoned?" Xiao Ai said, "Yes. To be more accurate, it should be called heartless. Only then will your heart be firm enough, and you can become the strongest as soon as possible." Ding Meng could not help but retort, "What's the point of becoming the strongest?" Living in a world of instrumental rationality, where the entire world is a cold and heartless tool, what's the difference between living like that and being dead? Xiao Ai also sighed. "I'm sorry, ACT5570. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm just trying to understand the eighth origin based on my own point of view. Of course, it goes against your will, and the direction of the Diamond Star technique will follow your will." Ding Meng sighed. "I'm not blaming you. I just feel that Captain Salmon's words might be more meaningful. The mission of us origin ability users isn't to pursue fame and fortune, but to fight for those who can't fight. I've been working hard for these words." Xiao Ai was silent for a moment before saying, "Although the eighth origin isn't fully formed yet, it now has new content, and it also has new qualities and functions. You can see it if you focus your mind." Ding Meng's telekinetic vision had already noticed that there was a bright spot flickering in the center of his brain. This meant that Xiao Ai's judgment was correct. The eighth origin was indeed still in the construction stage, and the patterns inside were all moving, just like film clips. They had not completely merged into one, nor did they form a direct connection with the other 7 origin points. However, the origin energy fluctuations coming from this origin point were unprecedentedly strong. Little Rascal finally spoke. "This origin point has greatly developed your brain and increased your telekinesis. Its content and expression is to return to the past, but time cannot be reversed in a 3-dimensional space." Ding Meng said, "What does this mean?" Little Rascal said, "Although time cannot be reversed, it can be slowed down. Now, use your telekinesis according to my instructions." Ding Meng immediately activated his telekinesis vision and spread it out of the sensor cabin. He could see that Cartel was still busy in the hall outside. He was constantly walking around the shelves as if he was picking up some materials. This time, the number of telekinesis dots had increased by a lot from the original 30 or 40 to around 500. They fluttered about within the range of his telekinesis vision. When his spherical field of vision was reduced to a diameter of 3 meters, all of the dots condensed on the surface of his field of vision. The originally transparent surface of his field of vision immediately flashed, as if it had undergone a transformation. It truly had a form of substance, just like a light blue crystal ball. An inconceivable phenomenon finally appeared. As long as Cartel left this special 3-meter range, his movements would clearly slow down. It was like a third of slow-motion scene in a movie. Every time he walked, every time he turned, and every time he raised his hand, it was slow and light. Ding Meng was shocked. This isn't me controlling him." Little Rascal explained, "This is because your telekinesis has undergone a qualitative change. This 3-meter wide space is a special origin ability field created by telekinesis. It has a repulsive effect on the planet's gravity. To put it simply, the gravitational pull on your body has decreased, indirectly causing time to slow down. Once time slows down, 1 second in the outside world will pass for 3 seconds inside the force field." Little Rascal explained. Ding Meng said in surprise, "Is that amazing?" Little Rascal finally became happy. "This effect is huge. Think about it. As long as your origin ability foundation is deep enough, you can keep this anti-gravity force field open to cultivate. 3 years of your cultivation is only 1 year in the outside world. By the same logic, the movements of other people outside the force field will be 3 times slower in your eyes. The speed of light-type origin ability users will be reduced by 30%, while your movements will be much faster in their eyes, Xiao AI said, so your choice isn't completely unreasonable. After all, as you cultivate the Diamond Star technique, there are limitless possibilities for its effects. In the end, it all depends on the gene fusion body itself. Ding Meng sighed. It seems like it wasn't all for nothing. Little Rascal immediately warned him, don't get too cocky. Don't use this anti-gravity force field carelessly. It consumes a lot of energy, and you still haven't completely constructed the core. This is the reverse origin crystal's energy, supporting the refinement of essence. So, you should seize this rare opportunity to cultivate. You've only taken the first step on this long journey. Ding Ming silently calculated. That was indeed the case. The more he cultivated, the harder it would be. He finally had a better understanding of the word harder. Right now, the refinement of essence wasn't enough to support the construction of the 8th core, so he could only wait for the energy storage space of the Diamond Star fusion art to be ready. After thinking about it, Ding Ming decided to activate the control panel and have Cartel let him out first. After the blades of the sensor cabin opened, Cartel didn't come over. Instead, he stared at a crystal bottle on the workbench. What's this? Ding Ming came over. Cartel didn't even raise his head. This is your sword. My sword. Ding Ming's eyes widened. There was a white and yellow powder floating in the bottle. It looked like powder, but it also looked like smoke. Did you melt my sword? Cartel shook his head and said, No, I'm the one who extracted the essence. Hiss. Ding Ming sucked in a breath of cold air. You can even talk about gold and platinum? Then what about my sword? Cartel turned his head and said, You came out just in time. I was just about to ask you, what kind of sword do you want? What kind of sword do you want? I can make you a new one. Ding Ming thought about it and said, I don't have any special requirements. As long as it's sharp enough and can be infused with origin energy, it's fine. Cartel stroked his beard and stared at him. Aren't your requirements too low? How can you casually use such a good material? It has to be a high standard. Ding Ming was helpless. His eyelids drooped as he said, I can't think of any high standards. Cartel slapped his forehead. I forgot that you're trained in telekinesis. Come, let me show you something good. It's really suitable for you. As he spoke, he turned on his wristband, and a holographic screen appeared. After a large row of densely packed data and codes appeared on the holographic screen, 3 large words appeared. Catoptric deflection. Ding Ming was curious. What is this? Cartel had a proud expression. Kid, this is a gift from an old friend of mine. It wasn't easy to get my hands on it. I'm the only one who knows how to make this sword. It's much better than your broken sword. Normal materials can't make it at all, Little Rascal said. These codes should be the theory behind the sword. They're all hidden in his wrist device and not stored in his photon computer. Maybe it really is a good thing. Cartel changed the hologram, and a round virtual bead appeared on it. What is this? Ding Ming's eyes opened wide. Cartel's proud expression became even stronger. This is Aqua Stone. I have a lot of them here, and they're all high-quality goods. Aqua Stone was not a real stone, but a highly condensed liquid metal. It had a very good compatibility effect. It could contain crystal sources, origin energy, silver core energy, and technological energy. This material was usually used to make small tools or to install in the key parts of large mechanical units. Using it to make weapons was a rather extravagant activity. Of course, it was not as extravagant as using it to buy ancient sword Dreaming Souls. With the Aqua Stone as the center, the 4 sides of the sword formed an X shape. Ding Ming was puzzled. This doesn't look like a sword. It looks more like a large clamp. Cartel was speechless. What do you know? I'm only showing you the concept, not the real thing. If it's really made, you'll love it so much that you won't be able to put it down. Let me put it this way, no one else can use this sword. It's completely made for you. You're exaggerating? Ding Ming expressed his doubts. Cartel was dissatisfied. You don't believe me? Ding Ming said, that's not it. Mr. Cartel, you're making a sword for me. I'm just a little embarrassed. Cartel glanced at him. If it wasn't for your money, I wouldn't have bothered with you even if you begged me. But don't thank me yet. This sword isn't as easy to make as you think. I don't even have enough materials. Ding Ming was curious. Even with the Starlight Group's wealth, you're still lacking materials? Chapter 272. Cartel was too lazy to explain. He directly ordered, I already have most of the materials, and I'm only missing one. Write it down. 20 boxes of brilliant blue gold, and each box must weigh more than 10 pounds. What's with that expression? Ding Ming's eyelids drooped as if he was dozing off. Mr. Cartel, are you sure you want brilliant blue gold? Cartel asked, do you have a problem with that? It wasn't just a problem. It was the most difficult problem of all. The blue luminous gold and the yellow luminous gold were made of the same metal. The T-shaped claws were made of the yellow luminous gold, and the blue luminous gold was of a higher grade. Not to mention that the Federal Empire did not have the method to extract and forge this metal. The obsidian mines were mostly excavated from the Devouring Realm. The first thing you asked me to do was to go to the Devouring Realm to get stones. This was 100 times more difficult than the trip to Meteor City. Cough, cough. Ding Ming was a bit embarrassed. I don't think I'm suitable for this aquaselenic sword. Mr. Cartel, why don't you help me restore the ancient sword? Cartel said, it's already impossible to restore it. I've already melted that ancient sword of yours. The truly useful materials are all in this bottle. Ding Ming was a bit dumbfounded. Without the ancient sword, he wouldn't be able to deal with the armor, and tough-type origin ability user's claws. Ding Ming was still in a daze when the system's voice suddenly sounded in the hall. Group employee Liu requests entry. Cartel operated the control panel a few times, and the door slowly opened. Liu's figure quickly appeared at the workbench and politely greeted Ding Ming. Mr. Ting, how have you been these days? These days? Ding Ming wondered if he had been in the induction cabin for a long time. Little Rascal immediately nodded. Yes, Ding Ming, you've been in there for 26 days. It's almost been a month. Ding Ming was a little anxious. The progress of the 8th origin was so slow and time-consuming. It seemed that he would have to activate the anti-gravity telekinesis force field next time. Otherwise, it would take him at least a year and a half to complete the 8th origin. Xiao AI said, that's indeed the case. You've used up too much of your telekinesis, which has instead accelerated your refinement of the inverse source crystal. This way, the efficiency will be doubled. Little Rascal said, I keep having the feeling that aquaselenic sword is really a good item. I just analyzed its manufacturing principle. It seems to be a special code for high-level red guests. To be able to use this kind of thing to encrypt, no matter how bad the sword is, it can't be too bad. It was rare that Xiao AI did not raise any objections. Yes, the modification will naturally continue, but we must also find a way to equip good equipment. If we encounter an opponent like the Herigla's armor again, at least it won't be as difficult as it was on Cypress Goo. While the two of them were discussing in private, Cartel glanced at Liu. Little Yu, why are you looking for me again? Liu smiled and said, Mr. Cartel, I brought the thing you asked me to bring. I'm just here to tell you. Actually, there was no need for her to make a special trip for this kind of thing. She could have just called through the wristband, but she still came in person. It was enough to show that the two of them had a good relationship within the corporation. Thank you. Cartel also showed a rare happy smile. By the way, aren't you going to represent the corporation at that Sir's banquet today? Liu smiled and said, It's Professor Lang. Cartel said, Then why aren't you going? This time, Liu's expression became awkward. I accepted this task. The corporation assigned 2 people to go. Now that everyone is out, I'm still missing one person. Cartel finally understood why she was here. He said in surprise, Don't tell me you want this old man to accompany you. Liu smiled again. Mr. Cartel, I'll have to trouble you. Please, I'm not going. Cartel's attitude was very firm. It's not like you don't know. I never participate in those ghost events. It's boring. Liu begged. Mr. Cartel, I beg you. I really can't find anyone else. I'm the only one from the 3 divisions at the headquarters. Cartel rolled his eyes and saw that Ding Meng was in a daze with her head lowered. He immediately had an idea. Let this kid go with you. Mr. Ting, Liu was startled. Mr. Ting's identity isn't very suitable, right? Cartel said. What's not suitable? He's a guest of the Starbao Corporation. He has a level 3 VIP card to attend Langton's banquet. He has the qualifications, right? Liu thought about it and felt that it made sense. Ding Meng immediately came over. What are you guys talking about? Cartel said, Kid, I'll show you the way. Go to a private banquet with Liu. There are many people there who have ideas. Maybe they can give you some ideas. If you can get the materials, I promise you that I'll give you a good sword in 10 days. Oh, Ding Meng's interest was finally piqued. It's possible to obtain brilliant blue gold in the Federation? Liu immediately said, Mr. Ting, do you need help with anything? There were many things that he needed help with. For him, the most important thing now was to go to the Linda department and ask Liu. Maybe he could find out something. Mr. Ting, it's great that you're willing to help. Liu's expression was very happy. After attending this banquet, I'll have more than enough contribution points for this month. Mr. Ting, come to my office to talk. I won't disturb Mr. Cartel's work. Ding Meng nodded and said, okay. Liu's office was located on the 228th floor of the central building. Although it was called an office, it was actually more like a lounge. In the 50-square-meter room, other than the central console that had 6 screens lit up, the other facilities were arranged according to Liu's personal preferences. The typical thing was that the room was filled with pink hues. There was a teddy bear on the sofa, and on the storage cabinet was a colorful wallpaper of Su Mengqing. Liu smiled and said, Mr. Ting, we're going to the banquet as a representative of the company. You might have to change your outfit, but don't worry. You don't have to spend money to go to the shopping mall. I have men's clothes here. My brother's figure is about the same as yours. There's a bathroom nearby. Why don't you try it? She was very considerate. When she received Ding Meng at the space station, she knew in advance that these people were refugees. When she saw them dressed like beggars, she vaguely guessed that Ding Meng's financial situation was not very good. Therefore, she first brought Ding Meng to her office to change his clothes. Although Ding Meng was obsessed with cultivation, he was not stupid. When he saw Liu take out several sets of clothes from the cabinet, and these clothes were all brand new. There were even 2 sets of clothes that were still in their packaging. He felt a little grateful. After all, Liu was considerate of him. Although he had hundreds of thousands of star credits in his wristwatch, he still did not have much of a concept of money. 10 minutes later, Ding Meng washed up and dressed up under the guidance of Little Rascal and Little Love. Then he walked out of the bathroom. Liu's eyes could not help but light up. Wow, Mr. Ting is so energetic. Am I? Ding Meng looked around at the black suit he was wearing. He was still not used to wearing it. Liu praised. It's true. You look so energetic. You're very handsome. The word handsome was a compliment, but after Ding Meng changed his clothes, his appearance had indeed changed a lot. At least now, his face was clean and his hair was combed. In terms of appearance, Ding Meng was not considered handsome, but his facial features were definitely well-defined. There was a trace of heroic spirit between his eyebrows, and this trace of heroic spirit gave him a different feeling. Although this person looked young, he had a calmness and tenacity that people his age did not have. Because Ding Meng was not very tall, the black suit did not have the effect of looking straight and upright. However, the suit was slightly tucked in at the waist, and the shoulders protruded. When paired with the dark blue tie and shiny leather shoes, Ding Meng actually looked particularly energetic. This kind of style was that although this person looked very calm and serene, you would feel that he had a sharp aura about him, like a sharp blade quietly waiting to be unsheathed. Before the blade was unsheathed, the aura of sharpness had already been produced. Mr. Ting, you're a combat-type origin ability user, right? Liu finally asked this question. Ding Meng nodded. Yes, I'm from the thermodynamics department. Liu knew that the fact that Ding Ming was even willing to tell him which department he was from was already a great show of respect. Within the Federation's borders, the data of origin ability users could not be directly asked about, unless the other party took the initiative to reveal it or revealed it in various activities or battles. It would be considered a rude act. The Starry Rainbow Group's security department was where combat-type origin ability users gathered. It was also the department with the highest status in the entire group. Although Liu had worked in this place for many years, she only knew that the Blue Moon branch had a total of 266 combat-type origin ability users. All of them were elites of their respective departments. Among these 266 people, there was 1 battle monarch, 2 origin energy generals, and 5 battle masters. Apart from that, Liu did not know any other information. The reason she was going to participate in this banquet was because a battle sovereign who was on good terms with her had given her the opportunity. That battle sovereign friend of hers was at a critical juncture in his cultivation and couldn't leave, so he had given this opportunity to her. Of course, this was easy to understand. Not every origin ability user's cultivation could advance as quickly as Ding Ming's. When everyone had nothing to do, they would race against time to cultivate in the sensory cabin. It was only after hearing Li Yu's explanation that Ding Ming finally understood that origin energy battle sovereigns were mainstream within the Federation's borders. The more powerful ones were battle masters, and battle generals were experts. He was still at the battle sovereign level, so he was still considered relatively mediocre within the mainstream. Of course, strength could not be measured solely by data or rank. Ding Ming was only 21 years old as a battle sovereign. This was a fact that no one dared to overlook. By the time they left the Starry Rainbow Group's building, it was already evening. The sky was gradually darkening. The two of them arrived at the tarmac and boarded Liu's Divine Wind shuttle car. Manual piloting was not allowed within the airspace of Blue Pole Star City. The autopilot system had to set the destination in advance and integrate it into the International Space Network. The traffic control system would then automatically assign the route and arrange the aircraft's airspace. In any case, Ding Ming did not understand these things. He watched as Liu fiddled with the control panel for a while before the system gave him a distorted driving curve. It seemed that they were flying towards a mountain peak in the east of Blue Pole Star City. The flight time given by the system was 26 minutes and 51 seconds. Fortunately, the flight time was not too long. Presumably, this place was not far from the Starry Rainbow Group's headquarters. Chapter 273. The location of the banquet was indeed not far away, because it was located at the top of a mountain on the east side of Blue Pole Star City. An open space of about tens of thousands of square meters had been developed, and a super mansion was built on this flat land. The mansion was built in the form of a 3-story villa, inlaid in the dense shade. Looking from the sky, this mansion could be said to be really grand. It had a helipad, a swimming pool, a tennis court, a badminton court, a golf course, and so on. The path leading from the helipad to the courtyard outside the main entrance was paved with white crystal jade, and there were parasol trees and neatly trimmed lawns on both sides. Standing in the courtyard and looking ahead, one could see the vast sea. If one looked back, one could see the bright and glorious night of Blue Pole Star City in the distance. Those towering buildings were like huge galaxies in the night sky. The original environment of this place was quiet and secluded, with birds chirping and flowers fragrant. It could be said that only the villa area of Flying Star City had such a place. However, this location was not something that Flying Star City could compare with. It should be known that this was Blue Pole Star City, where every inch of land was worth an inch of gold. Even the headquarters of the Starbow Group did not occupy such a prime location. It was enough to show that the owner of this mansion was not only rich, but also had a very high social reputation. On the way here, Ding Ming had already learned from Li Yu that the owner of this mansion was called Langton, a highly respected and authoritative professor. He had presided over many large-scale scientific research projects of the Holy Grail Federation and had been awarded the First-Class Contribution Honor Medal by the Federation. He was a first-class citizen of the Federation. The Federation was different from the Empire. The citizens of the Federation were divided into 6 classes, and the highest class was the special class citizen. This kind of person would only appear once or twice every 100 years, and they would only appear during wartime. Most of them were war heroes who had made outstanding military contributions to the Federation. Next were the first class, second class, third class, fourth class, and fifth class citizens. Among them, first-class citizens were only eligible to be awarded if they had made special contributions to the Federation. Second-class citizens had made outstanding contributions to the Federation. Third-class citizens were mostly groups, families, and other organizations. Fourth-class citizens were basically ordinary citizens. Fifth-class citizens were those who lived in the underground space. In fact, they were similar to alien refugees. The only difference was that they lived in the Federation, where their safety was guaranteed. The difference between each rank was huge because the rights, services, and public resources they enjoyed were completely different. At this moment, the entire villa area was brightly lit and bustling. The tarmac was full of luxurious and expensive shuttles and flying cars. One by one, men and women in splendid attire walked down from them with smiles on their faces. Ding Meng noticed that these people were all very young. Not many of them looked old, and there weren't even many middle-aged people. It was reasonable to say that many celebrities would attend Professor Lang's banquet. Since they were celebrities, there must be very strong masters among them. Since they were masters, it would be difficult for them to be young people in their 20s or 30s. Fortunately, Li had already explained to him that Professor Lang Dun had devoted his whole life to the research and development of science and technology. He had only retired from the front line 2 years ago. However, Professor Lang only had one daughter, Lang Ling. Moreover, Lang Ling wasn't an origin ability user. She was following her father's path and specialized in the research and development of science and technology. In other words, this Lang family only had wealth and fame. They didn't have any origin ability experts. Naturally, they wouldn't attract too much attention from others. This was similar to the situation of Chu Xiaoqing's family in the Norse Empire. Therefore, those who came to attend the banquet were all from the younger generation. They were all representatives of the major corporations. If it was during normal times, people like Li, you wouldn't even be able to come to such a place. Ding Meng estimated that he wouldn't even have the qualifications to pass by. However, Xinghong Group was the most famous super financial group in the Federation. Therefore, when Ding Meng and Li Yu walked into the courtyard, a man dressed like a foreman greeted them. After seeing the VIP card in Li Yu's hand, his attitude became very respectful. So, it's the distinguished guests of Xinghong Group. Miss Li, Mr. Ting, this way please. Ding Meng used his telekinesis vision to scan slightly. This foreman was emitting the aura of an advanced thermodynamic ability user. On the surface, this Lang family seemed to be very famous, but in reality, they didn't have any origin ability talents. However, Ding Meng didn't think so. He now knew that in the Federation, origin ability users who had a little bit of strength wouldn't easily spread their aura or release energy waves. This was also a kind of etiquette. If you sense the aura of an advanced origin ability user, when you really fought with them, you would find that they were likely to be advanced warriors. Therefore, when Ding Meng entered the venue, he also completely controlled his own energy waves. However, he believed that among the people who came to attend the banquet, there weren't many who were truly ordinary. The banquet hall was a standalone villa. After entering, one would feel that this place was a 3-story atrium space. There were no dazzling and gorgeous decorations. On the contrary, the walls of the 3-story building were made of beige crystal plates. Every piece was meticulously designed, and there were fine patterns engraved on them, showing the taste of the owner. This place perfectly combined the long history of culture with the simple style of the interstellar era. When the light shone down from above, one would feel a very pleasant and comfortable feeling when one was in the middle of it. Even a layman like Ding Meng could feel that this place was indeed low-key and luxurious, but it was also full of meaning. In the center of the first floor was a small stage surrounded by exquisite small round tables. The second floor was basically a spacious balcony. The guests sat together in twos and threes, discussing something in low voices. The banquet hall had also specially invited a band to play soothing tunes. The men were all very elegant, and from time to time, they would invite a beautiful woman to the dance floor to perform a dance to the tune. Of course, there were a lot of beautiful women in this place, and they were extremely eye-catching. After Ding Meng entered, he used his telekinesis vision to scan the entire venue a few times. However, after seeing so many of them, he was starting to get tired of them. Still, no matter how expensive and gorgeous these beautiful women's clothes were, or how dazzling their jewelry was, they couldn't shake off the traces of artificial beauty. The seats of the Star Rainbow group were arranged next to the escalator on the second floor, which was quite a good position. Liu obviously rarely came to such a high-end place, so she sat on the sofa and looked around excitedly. As for Ding Meng, what attracted him was definitely not the beautiful women, but the 4 or 5 plates of exquisite snacks on the table. Among them, there was actually a special product of the Norse Empire's planet TT-12, sour plum pecans. The fact that this thing could appear at a private banquet of the Holy Grail Federation in Blue Pole Star City was enough to show the courtesy of the Lang family to their guests. Therefore, Ding Meng quietly swallowed 3 plates, which was a very ungentlemanly move because this kind of occasion was not a place to eat. However, Liu smiled. She guessed that Ding Meng must have had a hard time in outer space, so she said generously, "Mr. Ting, you have to eat more. This pecan is a special product of the Norse Empire. It's very difficult for our Federation to eat it." Ding Meng looked around and whispered, "How much is this thing worth?" Liu sighed slightly and said, "About 8,000 star credits for a small bag in the 7-star shopping center in the East District. Of course, it's definitely more expensive here." 8,000? Ding Meng was shocked. Even if he had no concept of money, he should know that he had just swallowed hundreds of thousands of bottles of 500-plus deca-nutrient solution into his stomach. He really could not imagine how rich people would play, but it was precisely because of the high price that he had to eat it all the more. Thinking about it, it had been many days since he had tasted the taste of eating. Everyone knew how fast Ding Meng ate, but today they tried to slow down as much as possible. Even so, the waiter came over to change the plates 13 times in 5 minutes. After the waiter took away the 17th empty plate, he finally succeeded in attracting the attention of others. The Star Rainbow group was located in the southeasternmost corner of the second floor, and on the northwest balcony directly opposite, 3 young and handsome men in suits were holding wine glasses and talking loudly. "Huazai, do you see that guy on the other side?" Mu Hua smiled and said, "I saw him long ago. I don't know where this country bumpkin came from, but he actually came to this place to eat and drink. It looks like he's been hungry for a long time." "Little Yin, you only just noticed? Your perception is a bit bad." "Eh?" Dongfang Lian was also smiling, but his smile was a bit awkward. The security of the Lang family is not meticulous enough. They actually let this kind of person sneak in. Is he a 5th-class citizen? Yongbang? Is that possible? Yongbang could not help but roll his eyes at him. Even 4th-class citizens can't come in here. Do you really think the security of the Lang family is useless? I'm just joking. Dongfang Lian also knew that Yongbang was a bit dissatisfied with him. The 3 of them came here on behalf of their respective parents. Among them, Mu Hua was the most talented and strong. Although Yongbang's talent was second, his family background was good enough. In comparison, Dongfang Lian was a bit worse in all aspects. However, he was born with a good appearance and was the most handsome of the 3. Generally speaking, the families of these 3 people weren't weak. They were all very famous forces in Blue Pole Star City. Moreover, they were also very outstanding. Therefore, when they stood on the balcony, no one dared to approach them. This made it convenient for the 3 of them to chat. At this time, Yongbang meaningfully explained. Lian, don't underestimate those two people. They're sitting in the guest seats of the Star Rainbow group. Dongfang Lian's expression immediately became thoughtful. Oh, the people sent by the Star Rainbow group are actually so young. I've never seen these two people before. I think there's an 80% chance that the Star Rainbow group's experts are coming. They probably have something to do at the last minute, so they sent the younger generation here to see the world. Mu Hua said disdainfully. That's true. Dongfang Lian immediately put on a smile. That little beauty is quite beautiful. Unfortunately, she's not my cup of tea. At least, she's not an artificial beauty. Do I need you to say that? Mu Hua couldn't help but laugh. I've been waiting for an entire night. She's the only one who hasn't had plastic surgery. The rest are all a bunch of vixens. If no good targets appear, I'll leave first after Grandfather Lang finishes his announcement. Yongbang snorted. What makes you think there aren't any natural beauties? Mu Hua couldn't help but laugh even more happily. Yongbang, since it's so lively now, are you interested in making a bet? Yongbang's expression was a bit ugly. You're here again? How do you want to play this time? Mu Hua smiled and said, Of course we won't play too big. If we play too big, it'll hurt our relationship. 1 million star coins will be enough. Dongfang Lian hurriedly came over. Count me in. I'll also play. Fortunately, Ding Ming's telekinesis vision was turned off. If he heard the conversation between these three guys, he couldn't help but feel emotional about the mission in Meteor City. The Green Arrows hunters were so anxious for a mission that was worth a few 100,000 star coins that they didn't hesitate to spend a lot of money. However, these three rich young masters in front of him actually used 1 million star coins to bet on the topic of picking up girls. The difference between the citizens of the Federation and the refugees from outer space was really big. Chapter 274. While Mu Hua and the other two were betting, the lights in the hall suddenly became brighter. The music played by the band also became softer and more soothing. Everyone's eyes turned to the third floor. They saw a hale and hearty white-haired old man appear at the top of the stairs. Beside him was a tall and beautiful girl holding his arm. The two of them were slowly walking down the stairs. Liu quickly whispered, This is Mr. Langton and his daughter, Miss Lang Ling. At this time, all the guests stood up. Ding Ming also stood up. His attention fell behind the two people because there was a middle-aged man in a suit following behind them. Ding Ming's vision swept over. The middle-aged man actually turned his head and glanced at Ding Ming. Obviously, he discovered that Ding Ming was checking him out. Ding Ming was quite surprised. He quickly retracted his telekinesis vision. In his perception, the middle-aged man only had the aura of a beginner origin ability user, but he was able to see through his telekinesis vision. This showed that the other party's cultivation was quite profound. He was definitely not below Ding Ming, or even far beyond Ding Ming. The middle-aged man's eyes did not show any hostility. As soon as Ding Ming retracted his vision, he quickly turned his head and went downstairs. When he reached the top of the stairs, Langton showed a gentle smile and slowly opened his mouth to speak. Guests, welcome, very welcome. For a person like him to hold a banquet, the most important thing was to announce the news and let everyone know. Sure enough, the banquet hall quieted down. Even the band stopped playing. Langton waved his hand and smiled. Everyone, I am very honored to have invited everyone to my humble home today. I would like to take this opportunity to formally introduce a friend of my daughter, Lang Ling. Lang Ling, who was beside him, was naturally good-looking. She was wearing a white dress, and her expression was both shy and happy. Langton continued, Like all the young talents present here, he is an outstanding second-class citizen of our Blue Pole Star City. Moreover, this outstanding young man has a bright future ahead of him. He is upright, sincere, and selfless. He serves the military of our Azure System's Blue Moon Star as the commander of a special fleet. Next, let us welcome Major Du Peixing. Warm applause immediately sounded in the banquet hall. A handsome man in the crowd walked up the stage and bowed slightly to Langton to show his respect. Then he stood beside Lang Ling. On the balcony of the second floor, Muhua sighed deeply and said, Elder Lang is quite smart. His future son-in-law is from the Du family, and Du Peixing is an intermediate combat master. The two families are a perfect match, and the Lang family has risen to another level. Dongfang Lian smiled and said, Major Du and Miss Lang are indeed a match made in heaven. Muhua smiled and said, You've taken a fancy to him, right? Dongfang Lian said, When did I? Yongbang said, I understand. That's not your type, right? Dongfang Lian immediately smiled and said, Yongbang knows me best. At this time, Langton walked between Du Peixing and Lang Ling. He took their hands and slowly pressed them together. He smiled and said to the crowd, Next month, the two of them will be engaged. Those who have received the wedding invitation, please come early and have a drink. Another round of warm applause sounded. Du Peixing and Lang Ling bowed and thanked all the guests at the same time. At this moment, the crowd dispersed. Everyone chatted in twos and threes. Langton, accompanied by the middle-aged man, chatted with the guests who came up to congratulate them. However, the three people on the balcony of the second floor were restless. Muhua suddenly smiled at Yongbang and said, Yongbang, I admit defeat. Since he said this, it was obvious that a new natural beauty had appeared in the banquet hall. Yongbang also smiled and said, Well said, as long as you pay. Muhua smiled and said, I'll transfer the money to you later. How about it? Are you interested in having a chat? It was unknown whether he said have a chat or tease. Dongfang Lian also finally scanned. At the corner of the banquet hall's entrance towards the southeast, there really were three beauties. Moreover, they were three great beauties with different styles. The three of them walked in side by side. The one on the far left was wearing a bright red, slim-fit dress. The off-shoulder dress paired with the V-neck showed her gentleness and sexiness incisively and vividly. Her face was slightly mature and belonged to the category of beauty and enchanting. Every frown and smile showed a unique atmosphere. The key was her earrings, necklace, and handbag. With one look, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that they were high-end goods. Moreover, they only looked dazzling when matched with her body. Including that dress, the hem was a fishtail design. When she walked out with a pair of black high heels, there seemed to be a hidden fragrance wafting from her movements. Muhua smiled and said, Lian, this is your type, right? How confident are you? Dongfang Lian smiled and said, Huazai, you know her? Muhua smiled and said, I've met her once. She's the manager of Rainbow Gold Group. Unfortunately, she's not my type. Dongfang Lian smiled even more happily and said, I know, the one on the far right is yours. The one on the right was obviously shorter, only about 1.6 meters. Her face was quite charming. She wore a large blue-purple t-shirt and a long gray skirt. Logically speaking, this outfit would be very unconventional, but no one felt that the girl's outfit was inappropriate. On the contrary, she seemed to be particularly happy. She clapped her hands for a while and jumped up and down. She seemed to be very energetic and showed a kind of athletic beauty. Muhua smiled and said, I don't know her. Do you know her, Lian? Dongfang Lian's laughter was very strange, and his tone was somewhat mocking. I don't know her either, but I know the one in the middle. Isn't she Yongbang's lover? Muhua was surprised. Oh, since when did Yongbang, a person who has never been close to women, have a lover? Yongbang didn't smile. His brows were tightly knitted, as if he was thinking about a thorny problem. Dongfang Lian held his wine glass and laughed. Yongbang is chasing her. He's chasing her hard, but he still can't get the main point. The difficulty is greater than 100 points. Yongbang frowned and said, Lian, what do you know? Don't talk nonsense. You're Starlight University's campus belle goddess? Muhua asked curiously. Hee, to be able to make Yongbang serious. Let me see what kind of person she is. The one in the middle was very tall, at least 1.7 meters. She wore a light pink tunic cheongsam. Her hair was tied up high, and her face was dignified and gentle. The feeling she gave people was not retro and elegant, but generous and warm. From Muhua's point of view, this beauty had several impressive characteristics. First of all, the beauty's profile was very moving. When she didn't move, it didn't feel anything. But when she turned around slightly or raised her wine glass slightly, she was really graceful and charming. Secondly, her cheongsam slit was very high. In addition, she was tall and had a good figure. A pair of white long legs were faintly discernible. It was simply captivating. Of course, the most important thing was the beauty's temperament. With one look, one could tell that she was a lady from a prestigious family. She was cultivated by a big family. She was definitely not one of those vulgar women. Muhua also laughed loudly. I finally figured out one thing now. It turns out that you, Yongbang, actually have a leg fetish. Yongbang's expression was slightly irritated, and he also blushed a little. Huazai, Lian, you two are enough. Muhua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Yongbang, give me a chance to make a comeback, okay? Yongbang said helplessly, what do you want? Muhua smiled and said, old rules, 1,000,000. We brothers won't touch your goddess. The one on the left belongs to Lian, and the one on the right belongs to me. Let's make a bet. Whoever goes down to invite her for a drink and a dance will win. If he can invite her to the second floor, then who will win? Are you coming or not? I don't believe it. Your goddess is here. It would be strange if you didn't do anything. Yongbang shook his head helplessly and sighed. Well, just take it that I didn't confiscate the 1,000,000 just now. Muhua patted him on the shoulder. Do you have so little confidence in yourself? Young Master Yong, do you have stage fright? How about this? Let Lian, this veteran of flowers, be the first to go down and show you how to chase after a goddess. How about it? Yongbang didn't have time to answer him because Dongfang Lian already couldn't wait to go down the stairs. The people of the Appearance Association had an advantage because of their good looks. In the eyes of Muhua and Muhua, this guy, Dongfang Lian, successfully struck up a conversation with a few words. They didn't know what he said, but the beauty in the dress laughed until she covered her mouth. After that, the two people chatted happily. However, after chatting for 10 minutes, Dongfang Lian returned to the second floor with a slightly regretful expression. Muhua ridiculed. Lian, you're doing too badly, right? She didn't even touch the wine with you. Dongfang Lian's face was full of resentment. Huazai, she's obviously the daughter of the Rainbow Gold Group CEO. You lied to me and said that she's the manager, causing me to make a fool of myself. Yongbang also laughed. You're known as the Saint of Flowers, but now you're joining the Lovelorn Front. Lian, I doubt some of your abilities. Dongfang Lian helplessly patted his head. I lost 1,000,000. I shouldn't have joined. At this time, Muhua also went downstairs. He did the same old thing where he held a wine glass and chatted with the other party very elegantly. Then, he politely invited the other party. Unfortunately, although the girl in the dress happily clinked glasses with him, Yongbang and Muhua clearly saw that the girl in the dress gesture should be rejecting his invitation. However, when Muhua came back, he was very proud. At least I drank a glass of wine with her. Lian, just based on this point, you lost 500,000 to me. You don't have a problem with that, right? Dongfang Lian waved his hand and said, Huazai, don't be anxious. What if Yongbang kills all of them? Yongbang, how about it? It's your turn. Yongbang raised his head and drank the cocktail in a glass in one gulp. Then, he straightened his collar and went downstairs complacently. Yongbang's treatment was completely out of Muhua and Muhua's expectations. When he walked to the front of the other party, the Cheongsam beauty's warm smile quickly disappeared and was replaced by a cold expression. It seemed that she was very disgusted with Yongbang. What's the matter? Muhua was puzzled. Just a greeting and you screwed it up? Dongfang Lian shrugged and said, Didn't I just tell you why it's called lover? It's because we can't be together and it's difficult, so it's called lover. Muhua immediately gave a thumbs up. Lian, you're still the best at farts. Chapter 275. Muhua was right. Not only did Yongbang mess it up, but he also messed it up even more. She ignored him at first, but he still spread his hands and explained something. In the end, The beautiful woman in the Cheongsam was too lazy to listen. She simply went back to the table and sat down. She crossed her arms and turned her head away, not even wanting to look at him. Yongbang chased after her and explained again before turning back. When he came back, the helpless look on his face could be seen by anyone. He probably met with such a rebuff many times. When he went down, he was full of energy and self-satisfied. Now he was listless and dejected. The attendant beside him couldn't help but be concerned. "Young Master Bang, are you okay?" Yongbang waved his hand tiredly. "It's nothing. I'm used to it." Mu Hua smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "I can see that you're serious. You're not fooling around. Work hard and you'll get results." Dongfang Lian said, "There are so many beautiful women in Starlight University. Yongbang, you're so stubborn. You just have to hang yourself on a tree." Yongbang sighed. "She's different. No one has been able to get her so far." Mu Hua smiled. "So you have to be the first person to eat crabs." Dongfang Lian said, "Who knows? Maybe one day you'll eat it? That taste will be unforgettable, haha." Yongbang also knew that they were comforting him. He forced a smile. "Lian, I finally know why your father gave you such a strange name. It means that he's counting on you." Ha 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 ha. The three of them laughed together. While the three of them were joking with each other, Ding Meng on the second floor finally finished eating and wiped his mouth with a wet towel. He was definitely not full, but if he continued eating, it would not be rude. It would cause a misunderstanding because he had eaten a total of 37 plates. It was about time. Liu smiled and said, "Mr. Ting, the system notified me that the task is complete. We can leave now." Ding Meng was also not used to the atmosphere of this place. The main reason was that he did not know anyone here. It would be boring to continue staying here. It was better to leave early. Liu said, "I'm going to bid farewell to old Mr. Lang. Mr. Ting, wait for me outside first. I'll be there in a while." Ding Meng also knew that Liu was thinking for him. After all, he was a refugee, and it was not suitable for him to talk to people like Langton. It was not that he was afraid of arousing suspicion, but it was not necessary to cause some trouble. Of course, when Liu went to say goodbye to Ding Meng, he turned around and walked straight to the door. This scene did not escape the eyes of the three young masters. Dongfang Lian couldn't help but laugh. "Look, Yongbang, I wasn't talking nonsense before, right? That guy definitely snuck in. The Starbao Corporation's people were clearly about to leave. He didn't even dare to meet them and directly slipped away." Yongbang was in a state of confusion. His eyes never left the Cheongsam beauty. How could he be in the mood to pay attention to him? It was at this moment that an incredible scene appeared. Ding Meng was about to walk out of the door when he heard a surprised voice behind him. "Ding Meng?" Ding Meng was startled. He was sure that he had not misheard. Someone in this place actually knew him. Looking back, he could not help but be a little surprised. Du Mo? Du Mo was also wearing a suit and tie, but his temperament was very elegant. At a glance, one could tell that his status was definitely not low. Du Mo stretched out his right hand in a friendly manner and said with a slightly reproachful tone, "Why didn't you inform me that you were coming to Blue Pole Star City? I could have sent someone to pick you up." Ding Meng was a little embarrassed. "I just arrived at the Starbao Corporation and went to their energy department." Du Mo smiled. "I almost forgot about the incident on Cypress Planet. I should have known that you would come sooner or later. Fortunately, you came. How about it? When this is over, let's find a place to have a drink alone. It's my treat." Ding Meng still had a good impression of Du Mo. Du Mo had not only helped him a lot on Cypress Planet, but he had also always been polite. He had never been arrogant just because he was a citizen of the Federation. Ding Meng was willing to make friends with such a person. Ding Meng was about to answer when suddenly, an even more surprised female voice came from behind him, but it was definitely not Liu's voice. "Ding Meng? How could someone know me?" Ding Meng turned around in disbelief and said in a surprised tone, "Miss Dai?" It turned out that the beautiful woman in the Cheongsam was none other than Dai, whom Ding Meng had not seen for a long time. Dai almost trotted over and could not suppress the excitement in her voice. "Ding Meng, you've finally come to the Federation. I've been waiting for you for a whole year." As soon as she came over, She carefully looked at Ding Meng from head to toe. Her eyes were full of surprise and admiration. "You become a lot more handsome. You look more energetic than a year ago." "Huh? Senior Duo, you're here too?" "Miss Dai, so you know Ding Meng?" Duo was also a little dumbfounded. He knew Dai. They were both at Starlight University, but this cold goddess had always been dismissive of boys. Now, it seemed that not only did she know Ding Meng, but she had also waited for Ding Meng for a year. This was a bit too much information. He was not the only one who thought so. The beauty in the one-piece dress and the girl in the gray skirt also came over. When they saw Dai so happy, the two of them also looked at Ding Meng curiously. "Xiao, who is this gentleman?" "Sister why don't you introduce him to everyone?" Dai did not care that they were in a public place. She happily took Ding Meng's arm and said, "Let me introduce you all to Ding Meng, my cousin Ding Meng." This time, not only was Duo dumbfounded, the two beauties were also dumbfounded. The three people on a balcony on the second floor were also dumbfounded, especially Yongbang. He was completely stunned. "My eyes are misty. Can't I see clearly?" Everyone present knew Dai's family background. There was definitely no cousin by the name of Ding Meng. How could he be her cousin? He was definitely her boyfriend. However, with Dai's style of doing things, it was unprecedented for her to be so intimate with someone of the opposite sex. Look at her cute and lovable appearance. She was so happy that she wanted to fly. In fact, Dai was even taller than Ding Meng when she wore high heels. After a simple introduction, Ding Meng also understood the identities of the two beauties in front of him. They were close friends of Dai. The beauty in the one-piece dress was called Irene, and the girl in the gray skirt was called Su Qianqian. Like Dai and Duo, they were also studying at Starlight University and were very familiar with each other. "Hello." Ding Meng appeared to be very calm, because at this moment, he had already sensed that there were a total of 67 gazes sweeping over him from all directions in the banquet hall. Among them, there were a few gazes that contained very obvious hostility, and one of them actually contained a faint killing intent. He quickly raised his vigilance. This time, he didn't spread out his telekinesis vision. He knew that there was a master in this place. This was also the reason why they didn't wake up little rascal Xiao AI. They were worried that they would be seen through, so this time, they released telekinesis dots. More than 10 dots successfully bypassed the middle-aged man behind Langton and floated towards the balcony on the second floor. It turned out that his worries were right, because Yongbang's face was extremely ugly. It was as green as an apple's skin, and his eyes were full of deep hatred that couldn't be hidden. Seeing him like this, Muhua couldn't help but sigh. "Lian, check that kid's background, okay? It's faster for you to do this kind of thing." Dongfang Lian nodded solemnly and waved at the attendant standing not far away. The attendant quickly arrived and bowed his head. "Young Master Yin, what are your orders?" Dongfang Lian said in a deep voice, "Check that kid and see which family he's from. This guy is Yongbang's rival in love. You must find out clearly." "Yes." The attendant accepted the order and bowed his head. The atmosphere on the second floor's balcony was very solemn, but the atmosphere on the first floor's stage was very happy. After Liu politely said goodbye to the Lang family, he arrived at the entrance and was immediately stunned. How many minutes had it been? There was actually such a graceful beauty holding Mr. Ting's arm. It seemed that Mr. Ting wasn't flirting with her, but this beauty was very fond of Mr. Ting. As soon as Liu arrived, Ding Meng had to introduce his companions to everyone. After learning Liu's identity, everyone quickly became familiar and enthusiastic. Among them, the most enthusiastic was not Dai, but Aaron. The name of the Starbow Group was well known throughout the Federation. Although the Rainbow Gold Group was not bad, it was only limited to the Azure Star system. The Starbow Group was spread throughout all the galaxies of the Federation. The two groups were not on the same level at all. Therefore, Aaron's enthusiasm made Liu feel a little flattered. This was because he had good eyesight. He could see that in this group of people in front of him, except for Ding Meng, the other four were either rich or noble. They must be people of the upper class of Blue Pole Star City. Of course, the focus of everyone's attention was always Ding Ming. Su Qianqian jumped in front of Ding Ming and asked with a smile, "Ding Ming, I was wondering. Our big sister, he has very high standards and rarely comes into contact with boys. It turns out that she already has a boyfriend. How did you two meet? Can you tell me more about it?" Ding Ming's weakness was revealed at this time. He lacked the experience and emotional intelligence to deal with the opposite sex. However, his reaction was quite fast. There were some things that could not be said casually, especially the Battle of Flying Star City. Moreover, the two in front of him were Dai Yi's good friends, so he could not make things up. Therefore, he pondered and replied, "Well, I think we met on a remote planet in outer space." There was nothing wrong with this statement. The first time he saw Dai, he was in the office of KV-303 on planet Galaga. However, Su Qianqian was immediately amused. Big Sister Yi's boyfriend was a little cute. Aaron blinked and smiled. "Ding Ming, you mean that you went to a remote planet for a date and were afraid that others would find out, right? That should be the case." Ding Ming's concept was that he had indeed made an appointment with the Sky Wolf Corps. Aaron smiled enchantingly. "I understand. You two went there for business, right?" Indeed, they went there for business to retrieve the reagent for the Green Arrow Corps. Ding Ming replied without hesitation, "Yes, business." Su Qianqian laughed, so hard that she was swaying back and forth. "Then is it done?" Unfortunately, it didn't. Ding Ming seemed a little regretful that the reagent had been snatched away by Baiyu in the end. Hearing this answer, the two beauties tried hard not to laugh out loud. Aaron continued to ask, "Why didn't it work? Were you nervous or inexperienced?" Nervous? Ding Ming was nervous? It was obvious that someone else had stolen the reagent. He did not consider the various factors, but it was a little embarrassing to say this, so he changed his words. "You're right, I don't have any experience." Dai Yi's face was completely red. She really couldn't take it anymore. She pulled the two of them over and punched them. "What kind of weird questions are you two asking? Don't ask anymore. If you ask again, I'm going to get angry. Ha ha ha." The two beauties burst into an exaggerated laughter. Even Du Mo and Li Yu could not help but laugh. Everyone in the banquet hall looked over, curious as to why these people were so happy. Chapter 276. Ding Ming's group was very happy, but the more happy they were, the angrier the people on the second floor became. Yong Bang's face was already as green as it could get. Fortunately, he did not have to wait for too long. Not long after, Dongfang Lian's follower came back with his wrist device. "How is it? Is there any news?" Dongfang Lian hurriedly asked. The follower nodded. "I just checked. He's not from Blue Pole Star City." Muhua walked over and asked curiously, "Could he be from another galaxy?" The follower shook his head and said, "No, he's not a citizen of the Federation at all." "Oh." Muhua and Dongfang Lian looked at each other. The meaning in their eyes was obvious. Could this guy be from the Empire? The Holy Grail Federation and the Norse Empire did not forbid each other's citizens from entering their territory. It was just that the procedures were too cumbersome. If it was someone with a special identity, they would have to be accompanied by the relevant security personnel. However, this kid was obviously not one of them, and someone who could catch Dai Yi's attention must be of a high status. For a moment, the two of them were very curious. The follower continued, "But young Master Yin, we found 2 records of his entry and exit. He departed from planet KV-303 and first arrived at Phoenix Star Space Station 3. Then, he came to our Blue Moon's Skynet space station. This is a screenshot of his entry," the follower explained while generating a screen. The screenshot on the screen was the scene when Li Yu received Ding Ming's group of 4 on the space station. It was obviously taken from the space station surveillance system. It had to be said that the follower was able to obtain this information, proving that Dongfang Lian's family was very powerful. However, when they saw Ding Ming's group of 4 in rags like beggars, Mu Hua and Dongfang Lian were neither angry nor surprised. The two of them looked at each other, and then, Like Irene and the others downstairs, they burst into an extremely exaggerated burst of strange laughter. Ha ha ha! Muhua simply laughed until her stomach hurt. Dongfang Lian also laughed until he bent over. The two of them acted as if they had seen the most interesting thing, laughing until tears almost flowed out. In Yongbang's ears, this laughter was even worse than a direct slap to his face, because he knew why these two guys were laughing so crazily. They were laughing at him. As the young master of the Yong family, he was actually worse off than a refugee from outer space. Once this news spread out, he would have no face to speak of. Actually, Dongfang Lian knew that his friend had good intentions when he sent someone to investigate the other party's background. If that kid on the first floor came from some big power, or was a representative sent by some big family, then he should just give up. This was something that couldn't be helped. The other party's strength was there for all to see. Losing to a strong opponent was not shameful. But when the results came out, what kind of place was Planet KV-303? In the Federation's observation star field, this kid turned out to be an alien refugee. A refugee sneaked into the Lang family's banquet, ate and drank to his heart's content, and then brazenly abducted your goddess. If Yongbang was replaced by Dongfang Lian, he would probably laugh even harder. This was a complete disgrace. This was unbearable. Yongbang suddenly ignited a nameless fire in his heart. Without saying anything, he directly turned around and went downstairs. Let's go and take a look too. It was going to be fun. Muhua and Du Yi were also very bored. Torturing someone was something that they could not miss no matter what. Ding Meng and the others were chatting happily when Dai Yi's face suddenly turned cold. This was because Yongbang led a group of people over in an aggressive manner. Before Dai Yi could even open his mouth, Yongbang directly pointed at Ding Meng's nose and angrily said, "Ding Meng, tell me, who is this man?" Seeing that Yongbang's body was emitting origin energy fluctuations, Du Mo also felt that something was wrong. He took 2 steps forward and said, "Yongbang, what are you doing?" "Du Mo, it's none of your business." Yongbang was still pointing at Ding Meng. The hostility on his face was obvious. "Ding Meng, it's a good thing that you have a boyfriend. Don't worry, I won't cause trouble. However, if he's a liar, then I'm sorry for today." Liar. Aaron and Su Qianqian were suddenly curious. Hearing the word liar, Dai Yi's anger also rose. "I've rejected you so many times, but you still refuse to change your mind. Now, in front of so many people, you actually called my Ding Meng a liar. You're saying that you're not here to cause trouble? Do you think I'm easy to bully?" Dai Yi was so angry that he laughed. "Yongbang, you listen to me. If you say the word liar again, I'll immediately let you know the consequences." Yongbang flew into a rage. "If he's not a liar, I'll eat this table. Get lost." Dai Yi didn't care about his image anymore. He cursed, "You disgusting thing, don't ever appear in front of me again." Yongbang was completely furious. Dai Yi had only rejected him in a roundabout way before, but he had never described him in such a vulgar way. However, these words had completely destroyed all of his hopes. He secretly operated the 2 origin points in his body and was about to step forward to catch Du Mo personally when a deep voice suddenly sounded from behind him. "Esteemed guest, please don't be impulsive." Accompanying the voice was an aura as heavy as a mountain. It was this origin energy that was as sharp as a blade that had awakened him, forcibly suppressing his impulse. As soon as a relatively large energy fluctuation appeared in the banquet hall, the guests from all directions stopped talking and looked over in surprise. In the crowd, Langton had already led Lang Ling and Du pacing over. The one who spoke was the middle-aged man behind Langton. Ding Meng secretly thought that he was a light, speed-type origin energy user. Is there anything that can't be discussed peacefully? Langton still maintained that kind smile on his face. "Xiaobang, long time no see. Has Yong Nim been busy recently?" His tone was still slow and gentle, but there was a deeper meaning hidden in his words. It was one thing for the Yong family to send someone of the younger generation. After all, Langton had announced the engagement of the younger generation of the Lang family. However, the younger generation of the Young family had come to cause trouble. Did the Lang family neglect you? Thus, when he greeted Yongbang's father, Yongbang naturally understood the meaning behind his words. He quickly lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, Uncle Lang. My father has been out on business recently, so he really can't leave. Please forgive him." Langton nodded. He glanced at the crowd again and said, "I saw that everyone was chatting happily just now. Why did you suddenly quarrel?" This time, Yongbang couldn't take it anymore. He immediately complained, "Uncle Lang, a liar sneaked into this banquet." Liar? Langton's expression was also startled. Yongbang angrily pointed at Ding Meng's nose again. "It's him." Ding Meng was expressionless and unmoved. Dai immediately defended him. "He's not a liar. You dare to say no?" Yongbang's expression was bitter. "Xiao Yi, you don't even know that you've been scammed. This kid is a refugee. He's not a citizen of the Federation at all. If you say that he's not a liar, then what can he be?" As soon as the word refugee was mentioned, the banquet hall was suddenly filled with discussions. Obviously, everyone felt that it was inconceivable. How could a refugee be allowed in such a high-end banquet? Moreover, looking at the way he was dressed, the possibility of a refugee pretending to be a liar was indeed very high. Yes, we can also prove that Yongbang is not talking nonsense. Muhua and Dongfang Lian also walked up. What they said on this occasion was naturally not a lie. If they were exposed later, the family's integrity would be gone. Therefore, Muhua and Dongfang Lian dared to speak up for Ding Meng, which undoubtedly proved that there was definitely something wrong with Ding Meng's identity. Seeing that the matter was about to blow up, Liu knew that she had to stand up at this time. She took 2 steps forward and bowed slightly to Langton. Then, she politely said, "Old Mr. Lang, his name is Ding Meng. He's a level 3 VIP of the Starbao Group and has come to our Blue Pole Star City branch as a guest. This time, he came to your banquet with the authorization of the Starbao Group." With such formal wording and the mention of the Starbao Group, the discussions around them became even more intense. Everyone was even more curious. What kind of refugee could actually become a VIP of the Starbao Group? It seemed that this refugee was not simple. Yongbang also did not expect Ding Meng to have such an identity. It was completely different from what they had predicted before. However, now that he was riding a tiger, he could not back down. He braced himself and said, "But he's indeed not a citizen of our federation." Liu was about to speak, but unexpectedly, Ding Meng took 2 steps forward and replied faintly, "Yes, I am not a citizen of the Holy Grail Federation." Ding Meng, you die. He was also surprised. She thought, how can you admit it in public in this place? However, Ding Meng waved his hand slightly to stop her. Ding Meng could also see that Dai he was angry just now. In fact, he was also a little unhappy with this guy named Yongbang, because Su Qianqian had just quietly told him that this was the guy who had been pestering Dai every day. Dai had clearly rejected him many times, but he just turned a deaf ear to her. He's your love rival. The word love rival did not stimulate Ding Meng. The main thing was that during the trip to the Flying Star City, he had spent a lot of effort to protect Dai. In his mind, Dai was on his side. What was the meaning of this? Why were you pestering and being so unreasonable? Yongbang stared at Ding Meng. In front of so many people, you dare not admit that you are a refugee? Ding Meng quickly replied, "I am." Yongbang sneered. "What are you planning to do to E? Tell me honestly, or don't blame me for being merciful." Ding Meng refused to answer. Yongbang suddenly turned to Langton and said, "Uncle Langton, you saw it yourself. He admitted that he is a refugee. It would be strange if he is not a liar." Ding Meng didn't want to talk much, but he was a little uncomfortable when he heard this. "I'm very curious about your logic. Are refugees liars? Who did I lie to? Was it you?" "You." Yongbang was also led astray by him. "How dare you lie to Miss Dai? I will never forgive you." Ding Meng said calmly, "Even if I did lie to Miss Dai, what does it have to do with you? What's the relationship between you and Miss Dai?" Dai immediately stood up and said coldly, "Ding Meng, I have nothing to do with him. You and I are friends. Her answer was undoubtedly a confirmation of her relationship with Ding Ming. At this moment, Yong Bang was really angry. He thought that he had been deceived, but he didn't expect that it was true. This blow was bigger than anything else. The loss was too great. Mu Hua suddenly said seriously, Miss Dai, I hope that you will pay attention to your words. As a third-class citizen and a refugee, you should know the pressure of public opinion that you will bear. Dai Yi's thinking had been deeply influenced by Ding Ming in the Flying Star City. She couldn't help but say angrily, it's as if you say that you are human beings, but refugees are not human beings. You are citizens, but refugees must be liars? It's my freedom to be with whoever I want. No one else has the right to interfere, including you. If it's none of your business, you should stay away. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.